north, and with temperatures falling close to, if not a little bit below freezing, particularly in rural spots, that brings the risk of some frost and also some icy patches. The icy patches are going to be more of an issue across parts of northern Scotland, where the showers are more frequent, and worth bearing in mind these showers could bring some sleet or snow, particularly over any modest higher ground. Also some icy patches likely across parts of Northern Ireland too, especially towards the north, where we have some showers feeding in. A few showers perhaps for northwest England and also around northern and western parts of Wales, but otherwise, once that rain in the southeast has cleared through, it is looking largely dry as we go through into tomorrow morning. Then through tomorrow itself, again, lots of fine weather on offer, plenty of sunshine, just a few showers to watch out for, particularly towards some northern and western coastal areas, but most places avoiding these. And yes, just a bit of cloud bubbling up through the afternoon, but generally a fine and often sunny picture. That being said, temperatures around average for the time of year, so still a bit of a chilly feel to things. Later on, we will have a system coming in from the west that's going to push through overnight into Friday and lying across southeastern parts as we go through Friday itself. Behind that, though, a lot of dry weather following in, but it does look a bit cloudier than tomorrow, and so sunshine's going to be at a bit more of a premium into the weekend, and there will be a northwest-southeast split, with northwestern parts seeing most of the wet and windy weather.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Breaking news this morning, a plane crash horror in the States.
The terrifying moment, an American Airlines flight collides mid-air into a helicopter above the US Capitol.
Well, now the desperate search for survivors begins.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
Well, experts are trying to explore what might have happened, with reports suggesting the plane was split in two.
Also this morning, immigration raids on the rise. GB News finds out how many are exploiting an EU loophole to enter Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
Okay, right. You're not allowed to work with that, okay? So at the moment, okay, you're under arrest.
So I can confirm today that this government supports a third runway at Heathrow and is inviting proposals to be brought forward by the summer.
The Chancellor announces vast expansions of London's airports, but with decades before anything opens to the public, could it become another HS2? We'll be putting that to Rachel Reeves herself just before 9 a.m.
A shocking surge in shoplifting. 2,000 incidents a day as business owners cry out for help.
The greatest Britain remembered, 60 years today since Winston Churchill was laid to rest.
After 3 days lying in state, Churchill's body was taken along the Thames and through the streets of London in military procession. It was the biggest state funeral in history.
And in sport, well, a topsy-turvy evening in the final night of the new Champions League opening phase. Although Liverpool lost, they top all 36 teams and qualify for the last 16 with Arsenal and Aston Villa, whilst Manchester City have a knockout match to look forward to next month, as do Celtic.
Hello there. It's a cold start this morning, plenty of frost and also some icy stretches, but there is going to be plenty of sunshine. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, we start with breaking news this morning and plane crash horror in Washington, D.C.
Yes, a passenger jet with 64 people on board has crashed into the Potomac River after colliding with a US Army helicopter.
Well, 19 bodies have so far been recovered. The Coast Guard, police, divers, rescue and ambulance units are still at the scene.
US President Donald Trump has been posting on his social media platform Truth Social. He's condemned air traffic control at Reagan National Airport, saying that this is a bad situation that looks like it could have been prevented. It was an absolutely horrific situation, as you can imagine. An extensive search and rescue operation is taking place, but it is below zero in Washington. The Potomac is freezing over, and it is pitch black. It's 2 o'clock in the morning in Washington, D.C.
All right, well, let's get the very latest. They've been holding a news conference in Arlington, Virginia, and this is what officials have had to say.
I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I'm at Reagan National Airport. I am joined by United States Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, United States Senator Jim Moran, Senator Roger Marshall, Jack Potter, the CEO of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. We are here to brief you on the very tragic events of this evening, where we know a passenger plane coming to the airport here collided with a military helicopter. Our fire department, DC Fire and EMS, supported by fire departments and police departments from across the Washington metropolitan region, are executing a rescue operation in the Potomac River. They are working diligently in very dark and cold conditions, cold water, to execute this rescue operation. We have had the opportunity to be briefed by American Airlines officials. I'm told that American Airlines leadership is on the way to Washington as well. And officials are in the airport talking to families now. We do have a 1-800 number where families should contact us, should contact American Airlines for more information, and we will be providing that information shortly. I am going to turn to a number of officials to provide as much information as we can this evening, and we expect to have more frequent briefings at daylight. So with that, I'm going to turn to Secretary Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I think for all of us, we want to extend our thoughts and prayers to those individuals who were impacted by the events tonight, their families. We know this is a very difficult time for all of them. I want to join the mayor and everyone here to extending our thank you to the first responders who, again, in very difficult situations and environments, are out there searching and attempting a rescue. Tonight, I spoke with President Trump and his team in the Situation Room. I had a conversation with Secretary Pete Hegseth as well, and then with the Kansas delegation and the mayor and others in leadership, as well as Governor Youngkin from Virginia and Governor Kelly from Kansas. From the Department of Transportation and FAA's perspective, we are going to offer full support to those on the ground, to the mayor, but also to the NTSB, who is going to be conducting the investigation in this matter. We are going to provide all the support that's necessary. Mayor.
Thank you. So with that, I want to ask Chief John Donnelly from DC Fire and EMS to provide an update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Donnelly, Chief of DC Fire and EMS. This evening at 8:48, an alert was sounded, initiating a large regional response to a report of an aircraft crash on approach to the airport. This response includes first the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority's Fire Department, the District of Columbia Fire Department, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the U.S. Park Police to respond into the area and to sort that out. At 8:58, the first units arrived on the scene and found an aircraft in the water and began rescue operations. This incident has grown. There's currently about 300 responders working. We have boats from all throughout the region, police and fire boats. We have a mutual aid agreement in Washington, D.C., the National Capital Region Mutual Aid Agreement administered by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and we're all operating under that. We're operating under a unified command. Everybody's together. So we also have requested state police helicopters from Maryland, and the Coast Guard helicopter is working. So this is a state and federal response as well. U.S. Coast Guard's got some boats in the water as well. So it's a highly complex operation. The conditions out there are extremely rough for the responders. It's cold. They're dealing with relatively windy conditions. Wind is hard out on the river, so they're out there working. We're doing everything we can to keep them safe, and with that, I'm going to turn it back to the mayor.
Okay, John Donnelly there, Chief of the Fire and Emergency Services Department in Washington, D.C., outlining what is underway at the moment, which is a rescue operation with more than 300 first responders, the U.S. Coast Guard involved, and describing just how difficult those conditions are. Now, this is still a rescue operation. It's worth saying that about 18 bodies have been recovered so far. Not yet just a recovery operation, but it has to be said, things are looking pretty grim at the moment.
And just a reminder of what we know so far, an American Airlines flight has collided in midair with a US military helicopter. It's just above Reagan National Airport in Washington. They have both crashed into the Potomac River. Freezing conditions, very difficult conditions, as we're hearing. So far, local news, they're reporting at least 19 bodies have been recovered.
Dear me. Let's talk to former advisor to Bill Clinton, Steve Gill. Excuse me, Steve, who joins us now. I mean, this is a hugely difficult situation, as we're seeing a federal response to this as well, which is hugely important.
Yeah, and I've flown in and out of Reagan Airport many, many times, and it is very in close proximity, obviously, to the Capitol. I was there just a week ago for the inauguration, and I'll tell you, it is brutally cold. They're dealing in dark conditions. I think, as was mentioned, the weather is about 42 degrees, outside, but the weather in the water is about 37 degrees and starting to freeze over. So apparently the military helicopter carrying 3 military personnel collided with this American Airlines flight carrying 60 passengers, 4 crew in midair as the pilots were being of the helicopter being instructed, can you see the approaching aircraft? Early reports are they may have been looking at another aircraft rather than the one that literally was above them. They could not see that one, and as the two collided, there's some video that shows literally a fireball in the sky.
And the conditions that these rescuers are working in, Steve, as we just heard, are incredibly complex. We just heard they are extremely rough.
Yeah, and as they were mentioning, it's dark and it is windy, and again, on the water, that makes it very difficult. About a half mile or so from the airport. This was in the process of the plane landing at Reagan. It was in its descent, and the helicopter, apparently the training mission that they were on only had 3 military personnel on it. A Black Hawk helicopter normally would carry a full contingent of soldiers or military personnel, but in this case there were only 3 apparently on that particular flight because they were on a training mission.
The president seems to be pointing fingers at air traffic control at Reagan. Do we know if there's what's behind that?
There were instructions coming from the air traffic controllers that have already been revealed, trying to give instruction to the helicopter. There was one warning that there was a flight descending and that they needed to get visual confirmation of that. The second warning to the helicopter came literally seconds before the collision. I think it's too early to determine exactly what happened or who's at fault here. At this point, it's just a horrific tragedy. Reagan is an extremely busy airport. I mean, you've got not only all the military flights, the fact that it is the nation capital, security is at a high. It was extremely high, again, at the inauguration, with both helicopter and drone coverage. And then again, the number of flights that are coming in and out. This one was about, I think, 8:45 local time when the collision occurred. So again, that's still a very busy time at this airport as you head into the night.
OK. Steve Gill for now. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, my friends.
Thank you. Well, let's cross live now to travel expert Simon Calder, who's with us. Good morning to you, Simon. And tell us what we know about Reagan National Airport, because I imagine with its proximity to the White House and to Washington, D.C., there will be procedures designed to keep passenger planes and US Army helicopters apart.
Absolutely. So Washington, D.C., the U.S. capital, has 3 airports. There's Baltimore, Washington, there's the main international airport, Dulles, and then there is Reagan National. Now, what's unusual about Reagan National is that it is actually very close to the city centre. It's just across the Virginia state border, but it's 10 minutes by taxi from downtown Washington. So a really handy. The capital would prefer to use, and it is, as we were just hearing, very busy. There's flights coming in the whole time. And this extraordinary situation where you have a combination of a very busy airport and a political hub, which clearly, very sadly, on 9/11 was the subject of an attack, means that the skies are extremely well patrolled. There are very few, there are, of course, operations involving helicopters, most of which would be kind of presidential or security missions. But as we were just hearing, the air traffic control protocols are extremely strict. Now, we have seen in the same Potomac River in 1982, there was a crash involving an Air Florida jet taking off for Fort Lauderdale. That crash, very sadly, more than 70 people died. There were some survivors. That also was in January. And after that, of course, procedures were tightened up, and it just seems incredible that something like this could have happened. If it had been two civilian aircraft that were coming close together, they have very sophisticated warnings called TCAS, which is a collision avoidance system, which will instruct the pilots to do things, each a different thing, to get them out of danger. Clearly, if you have a military aircraft, in this case a helicopter, that is not going to apply. And most certainly there will be some very, very long and detailed studies about this. But for the moment, what a desperate tragedy for those on board, their loved ones. And well, we now have 3 fatal crashes in the past 5 weeks. You'll recall there was the crash of the Azerbaijan Airlines aircraft, which was effectively shot down by the Russians and limped across the Caspian Sea. After that, we had the Korean jet, which ran off the runway. It basically crash-landed without any undercarriage. And now we have this terrible tragedy. And, of course, aviation in the United States is incredibly safe. There are so many safety measures put in, and we will simply have to wait and see what happened with this. But, of course, these two, this helicopter and the aircraft, should not have been anywhere near each other. And whatever was happening on the training mission, it seems extraordinary that it could be taking place anywhere near the approach to such a busy airport.
Yeah, indeed. A lot of questions still on this. Simon, for now, thanks very much indeed.
It's absolutely horrific, isn't it? We heard from a man at the top, Haman Raza, who was waiting for his wife at Reagan National Airport, and she had just texted him saying, "I'll be landing in 20 minutes' time." And there will be families waiting there, won't there, at Reagan National Airport, hoping that their loved ones are pulled from that river. I can't even imagine what they're going through.
No, whether it's a survivable incident, we don't know at this stage. And we don't know what is going on with that military helicopter. There's imagery showing it just heading straight into the plane. Now, how that can happen with all the technology on these aircraft, it's very hard to say, but a full investigation will clearly be underway. The focus right now on trying to find anyone in that water, so it's a rescue and recovery effort. About 19 bodies have been recovered so far, 67 on the plane, 3 on the helicopter. So a lot of people still to find, and of course everyone hoping and praying that there are some survivors from this. We'll keep you fully across it, of course, throughout the course of breakfast this morning.
Now, 18 minutes past 6, let's take a look at the weather with Hope Krizik.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost, also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead, plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coasts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland, could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
5 years ago now, we developed this campaign called Regifting Beauty. And Regifting Beauty is about giving back to those that are in less fortunate situations than the majority of us. And I was coming across people that were receiving gifts at Christmas. You know how many gifts we receive? Gift sets, items, bath bombs, all of these things that we don't necessarily use. For myself, they sit in the bathroom cupboard all year round. So I was thinking of a way how we can make that better, you know, put that to better purpose. And we developed this campaign 5 years ago called Regifting Beauty. And it's where people can donate unwanted toiletries, sanitary items, skincare, perfumes, and we work with different charities around the country, and they will re-gift them to survivors of domestic abuse. And for years now, it's only really been focused around women. There hasn't really been a male focus. So Ben and I were having conversations, and we were thinking, well, and I was getting comments throughout the years of doing it, saying, why are men excluded from this? Surely it should be applicable to men too. I mean, in the UK, over 700,000 men are suffering with domestic abuse on an annual basis. And a lot of that goes unreported. And there's over 2 million people in the UK that do suffer from some form of domestic abuse, be it physical or psychological, and it's an important topic that we should be discussing. So this campaign is about providing something that may seem trivial, but it restores some level of dignity. And I think that's so important when survivors are just trying to regain aspects of their life. Something so small that maybe sitting in your bathroom cupboard that you're not using could go to such better use. So this year we're launching the Regifting Beauty, the Turnaround Edition, about turning around moments in life and allowing people to have those turnaround moments, which also plays on Ben's, song, Turnaround.
Gotta turn
it fits in nicely with that.
Which I'll be on with you.
For the remix,
it's all fitting in nicely, isn't it?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 6:23. Just to update you on the breaking news coming out of Washington, D.C., where American Airlines plane with 67 people on board has been involved in a collision with a Black Hawk helicopter, US military helicopter, both aircraft crashing into the Potomac. there's currently a huge rescue and recovery operation underway. Those involved saying it is still, they're following the rescue protocol, so working on the basis that there could still be people alive in this. But so far, 19 bodies have been recovered.
So far. And of course, those first responders working in very complex conditions, freezing cold conditions, very windy night in Washington, D.C., and it is as well the middle of the night, 2:30 in the morning there. We'll keep you abreast of that rescue operation as it continues here on GB News.
Now, illegal workers coming in from the EU are on the up. That's thanks to abuses of the common travel arrangement with Ireland. We can reveal for you this morning.
Well, many Romanians and Bulgarians in particular are avoiding border checks by crossing from the Republic, with others simply arriving on tourist visas and then finding work.
Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, was given exclusive access to accompany immigration enforcement teams.
Under the cover of darkness, immigration officers and police move into this large agricultural business in North Wales.
No one up there?
Nah, I haven't been touched. They're on the hunt for immigrants working here illegally. And it doesn't take long to find their first suspect.
On you now.
The man they've detained is a Romanian national.
What's your permission to be in the UK? You got a visa to come to the UK?
For several years after Brexit, EU citizens enjoyed a grace period when authorities didn't prosecute those working here unlawfully. But now, if they breach the rules, they're treated like any other illegal immigrant.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
OK. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, OK? So at the moment, OK, you're under arrest, OK? For breaching the conditions of your leave to remain in the UK. Do you understand?
As fellow officers search for other suspects, the Romanian has walked back to his accommodation on the site for further checks.
Anybody else in your caravan?
Inside a cluster of caravans, more suspects, all Romanian, are being questioned.
Where is your passport?
Officers told me they see very significant numbers of Romanians and Bulgarians in particular abusing UK immigration rules to work here illegally. An increasingly popular means of arrival is through the common travel arrangement with Ireland, and some of those detained here may well have come through that route.
We've got individuals that we've got a trace of them exiting the country. We've got no trace of them coming into the country. So we haven't bottomed that out yet, but what we found in the past is that they will have come through Ireland and then through the common travel area, you know, avoiding the controls.
In nearby offices, another group of Romanians are being questioned. Although the Home Office was unable to provide us with a detailed breakdown of the number of EU nationals arrested on immigration offences over the past year, this enforcement team told me it's definitely on the rise, and many are coming through Ireland.
Not just the EA nationals that are going through Ireland, it's other foreign nationals, because it can be like the back door into the UK. So you've got the small boats where people are coming in illegally. You've got other clandestine that are coming in the back of lorry, but obviously there's the abuse of the CTA as well.
Many others are simply arriving on tourist visas and then finding employment in breach of the law. As officers question the suspects with the help of interpreters over the phone, it quickly becomes apparent why some are willing to take the risk.
OK, so how much do you get paid?
1,000 a week.
£1,000 per week.
For those employing illegal workers, these enforcement raids can be very costly indeed, with fines of up to £45,000 per illegal worker. Yet right across the country, thousands of employers continue to flout the law. Since Labour came to power, immigration enforcement raids have increased by more than a third over the same period the year before. But despite more than 3,000 arrests over the past 6 months, it's still only a tiny fraction of the number of illegal immigrants here, with unofficial estimates putting that figure at more than 1.5 million. Mark White, GB News, North Wales.
Well, let's talk to former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Reddrop, who's here. I mean, clearly, this whole issue with the common travel policy needs to be addressed. I don't know how you even begin to do it, but it's got to be looked at.
There's an absolutely fascinating package that you guys have put together there. It's brilliant, brilliant journalism. And actually, it's funny when you see the scale of these things and all the different routes, and of course we talk about the channel crossings, but, you know, even just the fact that people can come to this country, they'll do this 6 months, and then when they should, you know, when that lead to remain, they kind of slip through the net and remain undetected. And the island route, I mean, you just really realise the scale of the issue. I mean, when you show and tell the problem like that, and it's interesting that the government, since Labour have come in, have gone up by a third. Is that what the package was saying?
Yes,
in terms of
significantly gone up, which is interesting.
Which you have to say is really, really good stuff. But if you're not showing the public that, which you guys have just done this morning, and you're just telling them, it won't have the same political effect for you. It won't create that momentum, and people won't actually feel that you're doing some really good stuff there. So Labour should be pretty... I mean, all things considered, that's quite good stuff from the Labour Party, I have to say. But it really does talk to the scale of the problem. And, you know, I'd be really, really interested to see... and I think I've talked about this before with you guys, but in terms of the reform conversation and how they've kind of moved the window on these things, and particularly when you see what Trump's doing in terms of those ICE kind of deportation schemes, I really do feel like that's going to kick into our politics more and more over the next couple of months. But that is such a brilliant report, and if the government aren't forthcoming or haven't been supportive in terms of the Home Office in providing footage like that to the public, then they, just purely from a communications perspective, they really, really should.
And it acts as a deterrent as well.
Absolutely, exactly.
And this all ties into the ONS figures from earlier on this week, the migration numbers, estimates of 5 million migrants to this country by 2032. And many of them, as the ONS was saying, are people who are here on visas, and they outstay them.
Yeah, and so when we think about immigration to this country, and we see, you know, the really kind of visceral shots of, you know, people crossing the channel on really dangerous boats, and but actually it can be quite innocuous. It can be people just coming here and remaining undetected and staying here when they shouldn't. It's not sustainable, the numbers as we see them now. The projected population growth figures that came out yesterday, the burden and the difficulty that will mean for, you know, infrastructure. Rachel Reeves talking about lots of infrastructure projects, but when you see a population rise like that, it is just not sustainable. People will not feel the benefits. School places, hospitals. You guys talk about it on your show nearly every single day, you know, those kind of nuts and bolts of life, and with numbers going in that direction, just not sustainable.
No. OK, Oscar, thank you very much indeed. Just before we head to a break, just want to tell you about the Great British Giveaway. £50,000 could be yours, but you're running out of time if you want to enter. Here's how you can do it.
Lines close tomorrow on your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains again today between Ayr and Stranraer after the storms. In County Down, the A51 remains closed in both directions along Tandragee Road in Guildford because of a fallen tree. That's been closed since Friday. On the M69 in Leicestershire, there's a lane closed each way after an accident between Junction 2 at Burbage and the M1 near Leicester, causing queues. In Oxfordshire, the A40 is closed eastbound off the A415 at Witney, where a lorry overturned yesterday, affecting traffic heading towards Oxford. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking 10 minutes in queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. Gatwick Express train services remain suspended between Gatwick Airport and Brighton after a landslip, and the Hythe Ferry from Hythe and Southampton's not running because of engineering work.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
An absolute monster. It took Chloe and Sean Ing 90 minutes to reel in this gigantic 8-foot-long monster fish from Chigborough Fisheries in Essex. And upon weighing this enormous marine beast, it was found to have been 7 pounds heavier than the existing British record, a 143-pound catfish caught also in Essex. But as I understand it, you actually went for a Chinese meal when fate struck. Is that right?
That's correct. So I was fishing an area of Chigborough where you have to fish at a fair distance. So I cast my rods out, and then we ordered a Chinese. And yeah, so I got the bite at about 10 to 8 at night. And then about 20 minutes into it, my phone started ringing, the Chinese guys at the gate with my delivery. So I had to send a couple of guys off to go and get it. And then, yeah, the fight, obviously, you can't just stop the fight to go and get your Chinese. So, yeah, the fight went on, for about an hour and a half in total. There's no net in the world that's big enough for this fish. So we had to send out, first of all, I sent out a mate, Alex. He went out there to go and basically use what we call a sling. So that's a safe apparatus that we use to take the fish out of the water. He then went to and he turned around and he was like, we're going to need another sling. So then we sent out another friend with a sling, and these slings are 4 foot long each. So then we had the catfish wrapped up in 2 slings, and it was still slightly longer than that. And then we got to a point where we was like, now we've got to try and get it out of the water to photo, to weigh it, because obviously we knew then that it was possibly going to be a UK record.
GB News.
It's 6:36. Just a reminder of the breaking news out of Washington, D.C. this morning. An American Airlines flight has collided in midair with a U.S. Army helicopter in Washington, D.C. Both the plane and the helicopter have crashed into the Potomac River, where rescuers are now working in very complex, very cold and dark conditions to try and get to any survivors.
Yeah, the DC Fire Chief, John Donnelly, has been talking to reporters. He says, we just don't know at this stage if there are any survivors. 67 people involved in this, 3 on the US helicopter, on the military helicopter, the Black Hawk, and 64 on the aeroplane, 60 passengers, 4 crew. 18 or 19 bodies have been recovered so far. Mr. Donnelly saying that they're going to have to reevaluate this in the morning. That search is ongoing with those teams, but the water's very cold. There's ice in the water. Visibility is obviously very poor, but they can't assess whether this is going to turn into a recovery operation until the morning.
We'll keep you abreast on that rescue operation here on GB News.
Right, in the meantime, let's have a look at the sport. Paul Coyce is here. Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Champions League, really.
Yeah, good night for Man City.
Yeah, well, yes, it was a good night. I say, yeah, it's been a funny old campaign, really, for the Champions League. Now, the Champions League, it's now the Swiss method, as you probably realise. They've changed it now, whereas you've got 36 teams all in one league, and they will play 8 games, 4 at home, 4 away, and it will be all random who they play. So Man City have just had a terrible time. They've just been awful in this, and it looked like they were playing basically for their lives yesterday, and they went 1-0 down against Club Bruges at the Etihad, so it looked like they were going to go out, then came back, 53 minutes, Mateo Kovacic scored, own goal, and then Savinho on 77 minutes, which means that they are now through into a playoff game. So they're not through to the last 16, but being 22nd, I should say, out of 24, they will now go on to play, how about this, either Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, which is not going to be an easy one, because the bizarre thing about how things have gone is that Real Madrid have also not qualified to go straight through, and neither have Bayern Munich. So the way this has worked out, Manchester City are going to have to play either Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. So Pep Guardiola was asked what he thought about playing either of those in a playoff game next month.
We deserve it. Maybe we can do it better. Maybe we were lucky. I don't know if they are happy to play against us, but it's what it is. So it's no complaint at all. So it's Bayern or Madrid, Madrid or Bayern. We're going to face them. So
Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. But you know who else could draw either of those two?
Who's that?
Is Celtic. Now, Celtic, because you've got... It's bizarre. Real Madrid and Bayern Munich are next, 11th and 12th. And then you've got Celtic, who are 21st, and Manchester City at 22nd. tell me if I'm losing here, because it is quite complicated. But Celtic, although they lost to Aston Villa last night, who won 4-2, have now qualified for the last 16, Celtic find themselves in the playoff, and then, by chance, or the way the cookies crumbled, they will also play either Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. So the draw for who they play out of them and Man City will be made on Friday.
OK. So we have the Europa League.
Yes.
Spurs are playing tonight, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Spurs are playing tonight. So the Europa League...
I hope it's better than Sunday.
I hope so. I hope so. I was going to say, I was hoping that you might be the lucky mascot, but it wasn't.
I was actually very unlucky.
It wasn't the case, was it, really?
No, sorry.
But anyway, Spurs, who are currently... It works the same way. The Swiss method again for the Europa League. Spurs, who in 6th, the top 8 will qualify straight through. They play Elfsborg, who are from Sweden. FCSB... who formerly known as Steaua Bucharest, are playing Manchester United. So Man United are 4th at the moment. And Rangers, who are 13th, will play Union Saint-Gilloise, who are from...
France, hopefully.
Nearly. Belgium.
Belgium.
That's it, they're from Belgium. So anyway, so it's been a busy night of Champions League, and it's a busy night of the Europa League tonight, and it's just a matter of... Really, I need an abacus. That's what I really need.
Yeah.
If I just had an abacus, I'll be able to explain it so much better for you.
That's very complicated. It's the Swiss.
I know.
That's all I can say.
And it's at this time of the morning, quite frankly, too many numbers, too confusing. I can't apologise enough.
Quoty, thank you.
Pleasure.
Right, before we have a look at the papers in a couple of minutes, let's just tease you with a bit of winter sun and the forecast for the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Strong winds across the Canary Islands, also some wet and windy weather for the Balearic Islands, but largely settled elsewhere across eastern parts of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece and parts of Italy. But as we move our way westwards, this is where we'll find the unsettled weather, so some heavy showers, also some strong winds at times. But further west, largely settled as high pressure dominates, but that is going to bring in some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife. But that's where we'll see the best of the temperatures, and also largely settled as we head towards the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
We've got the Daily Mail now with the latest in the court case over whether a man is a woman or a man. It's a tough question, and J.K. Rowling has given her opinion. I think I can guess what it is, Cressida.
Explosive twist in Australia's What is a Woman trans battle as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling gets involved. So this is the court case Giggle versus Tickle. Tickle was a...
He's Mr. Men.
That's right. It's a Mr. Men trans battle.
Kind of is a Mr. Man.
It was a women's group, wasn't it? Tickle, Giggles... Oh, I get it wrong. Giggles for girls. And Roxy Tickle, who is a trans woman, wanted to join this group and wasn't allowed, was banned for being a biological male, and then sued and amazingly got $10,000 for this, which is already extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
But it's now doubling down and is going to file a cross-appeal seeking to upgrade the judgment.
Yeah.
So Roxy has come back for another bite of the cherry.
And I've had a look at this Roxanne Tickle, the trans woman.
Is she
pretty? No, not one of the pretty ones. Not a Blair White. Just looks like, to be honest, it looks like
you could be sued for $10,000.
Looks like one of us.
Yeah.
To be honest, no, like I mean, I'll happily.
For yourself.
No, I think it's an absolute. It's a farce, and it's making a mockery of not just. It's not just making a mockery of women's right to have their own spaces. It's making a mockery of genuine trans people who actually put some effort in and look like a woman.
What do you mean a genuine trans
And also,
people?
if
We don't believe in that.
If your name was Roxanne, if you were going to transition, you wouldn't pick the name Roxanne Tickle.
What?
You choose Tess.
You Tess. That's a kind of name. No, the truth is that's one of the problems, is you get a choice of the name you're going to choose. And of course, you're going to choose like a hot Roxanne. That's a hot Roxanne. That's a great name. They're not going to choose.
You don't think
Louis.
Tess would work better with Tickle?
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
It's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, time for the papers this morning. I can't see the time, 6:45, with political commentator Alex Armstrong and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Morning, you two.
Good morning.
Let's just kick off, should we, with what's going on in the States, Washington, D.C. at the moment, and this crash, mid-air collision heading into Reagan National.
Quite shocking. I mean, people waking up to this morning. Of course, there's been a slew of plane crashes over the last month. I think there's been at least 5 since Christmas, at least. And so this is an American Airlines jet collided with a Black Hawk military helicopter at the Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. The plane was carrying 64 people, I believe, and the helicopter at least 3, from what we know so far. Now, that plane, at least the wreckage of it from the mid-air collision, landed in the water surrounding the airport. So I believe there's a massive operation underway to try and, get to see if there's any survivors, which, you'd be surprised if there was, having seen some of the footage. But hopefully they can find some people there. The water's meant to be ice cold as well, so the rescue mission's got to be fast. But this is just absolutely horrific stuff, and you never expect anything like this, do you, when you get on your flight, and it's such a safe form of transportation. But over the last month, the people will be questioning whether it's so safe anymore.
It just makes you feel sick to your stomach, doesn't
It does.
Actually, and I do remember, I'm not a great flyer. I mean, there's barely a flight I've taken. I haven't thought I was going to die. But, I mean, I do sit there and think, God, what a way to go. I mean,
it is extremely safe, but if something goes wrong, it goes very wrong.
Very wrong.
That's the problem
And,
with all of this.
there will, of course, be questions, not right now, but later on, about how a Black Hawk helicopter was in commercial airspace and what seemed to be a final approach to this airport.
That's the shocking stuff, isn't it? They were supposedly on a training exercise. But who does a training exercise in a flight path? And so I think you're right, Ellie. There's going to be serious questions asked. I would have thought, Americans don't wait. They'll be on this straight away. They'll be wanting to have answers immediately as to how this has happened.
But was the jet on the right flight path? Was the helicopter given the wrong information? Why didn't they see the plane in front of them? And there's a whole load of questions. It may be something as simple as pilot error.
Well, we have got a little bit more information just coming through from the Associated Press news agency about those final communications between the controllers and the aircraft. Air traffic controllers asked the incoming plane if they could land on a different runway at Reagan National, a shorter one. The pilot said yes, they could. The controllers cleared the plane to land on that different runway. It's runway 33, and the flight tracking site is then updated to show that adjusted approach. Less than 30 seconds before the collision, the controller asked the helicopter if they could see the plane in front of them. The controller then made another call to the helicopter just a few moments later, saying, please pass behind the aeroplane. Seconds later, they crashed.
Crazy stuff. What's interesting as well is that there's a lot of calls already blaming different politicians for this, some saying Donald Trump for freezing hiring, saying that they can't hire air traffic controllers. And you should think, is it really already playing the blame game so far? It's crazy stuff.
It's not time for that. Anyway. It's time for trying to get people out of the water.
Agreed.
And thinking of those families, of course, at the airport who are desperately waiting.
Let's have a look at The Guardian, Scarlett, should we? Some children are starting primary school, it says, unable to climb a staircase or use books.
I know, or speak properly. I mean, this is absolutely terrible about how children are not ready to start school at the age of sort of 3, 4, and 5, and And we can't go on blaming COVID. I mean, that's what they're saying is we cannot say this is the COVID generation, right? This is about parents not preparing their children for school. And what the government is saying is we've got to put a lot into early years. Those early years, which is what makes the real difference for children, is about speech and language and helping them and helping parents. As in the old days, we had Sure Start, which actually worked with parents and children to give them a good start in life.
Why are parents unable to do this on their own? This is why do parents need to be guided into how to do the basics?
Stephen, some parents don't. And who loses out? We criticise the parents and the children lose out. And what's really important is that we pay attention to the children.
But isn't there an issue with this? Is what concerns me slightly, and I may be totally wrong here, but the idea that the more you lay on, the less parents, or some parents, proactively do, because I think that's being taken care of.
No, well, I don't think it's. I mean, there's very little laid on. That's the problem. Is they're taking in children sometimes who are not properly toilet trained, who don't know how to pick up a book. I mean, the government.
But there's surely some onus on a parent to teach their kids these basic things.
Of course, I agree with you.
I'm not saying you don't. I'm not saying you disagree with that.
I'm a boring parent who read to my children all the time.
I just reject that nanny statism that the schools have got to do more and more. Schools are already feeding kids, brushing their teeth. Come on.
I'm not saying. I mean, what I'm saying is that schools find it impossible to deal with. Find it very difficult to deal with children who don't know how to use a book, who don't know how to climb stairs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right. And so what I'm saying is that actually what the government is doing is they're putting resources into the under fives to actually help those children.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's I don't think it's letting parents off the hook. But you can't have the children losing out because they've got pathetic parents.
Yeah.
Alex, can we talk about Lord Mandelson? He was now saying it was ill-judged and wrong to describe Donald Trump as a danger to the world. He didn't mean it.
Well, I mean, look, can I be honest? I think he's lying. I think he's lying through his teeth. I mean, he has to, right? He's the top diplomat for us to the Americans now, so he can't say he hates Donald Trump and thinks he's a racist or whatever else he called him, I don't know, allegedly at least, because he has to now negotiate with Donald Trump and try and get good deals for us. So, of course, he's got to now, be nice to him, as we've seen all of the front bench Labour Party have to do, including Keir Starmer. So I think he's lying about his personal opinions about Donald Trump, but that's his job now. He has to lie.
Yeah, no, I mean, Peter Mandelson is the new diplomat, right? And all these stories we heard about how he was going to be turned down by Donald Trump and Donald Trump was trying to get rid of Keir Starmer and everything, and this isn't happening. Peter Mandelson's going to go in there, and as we know from the Vice President of the United States, if you say sorry and I don't mean it anymore, you're forgiven, because nobody was as rude as Vance.
That's true. That's true. It's just, do you think now, despite all of this, and despite, I mean, look, we look at him in an ill light when he appears to be so obviously changing his mind. It might not matter to the White House. Will he be the man to negotiate?
Yes.
I think he's a smooth operator.
He's a very smooth operator.
Sure. I mean, listen, the Americans won't forget what he said. Let's put it that way. They'll know this is politics, and I'm sure Trump is doing the same thing because the Republicans have said stuff about Keir Starmer as well. Said, even Donald Trump's son said he didn't like Keir Starmer. So this is politics 101 for you. You have to put on a face. And Donald Trump is a businessman. He wants to do deals. So he won't care what people have said about him. In fact, his new health secretary actually sued him, decades ago. So Donald Trump clearly isn't that thin-skinned, and he knows we've got to try and do a deal with Britain. So we've got to try and keep a nice face on things here.
It's about being a grown-up, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice idea in the world of politics. Isn't it? Lovely. Thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on, and we'll have full coverage of what's going on in Washington DC, of course, with that mid-air collision in just a moment.
Here's your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost, also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead, plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland, could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains again today between Ayr and Stranraer after the storms. There are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to Stemline sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast. In County Down, the A51 remains closed each way along Tandragee Road in Guildford, blocked by a fallen tree since Friday. On the M69 in Leicestershire, there's a lane closed each way after an accident between Junction 2 at Burbage and the M1 at Leicester, causing queues. In Oxfordshire, the A40 is closed eastbound off the A415 at Witney after a lorry overturned yesterday, affecting traffic towards Oxford. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking 20 minutes in queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. Gatwick Express train services remain suspended between Gatwick Airport and Brighton because of a landslip, and there's no service on the Hythe Ferry between Hythe and Southampton because of engineering work.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This good luck. In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Breaking news this morning, and a plane crash horror in the States.
The terrifying moment, an American Airlines flight collides mid-air into a US Army helicopter above the US Capitol.
We're now underway, a desperate search for survivors.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
300 emergency responders are searching the waters as officials admit we don't know if there are any survivors.
Also today, immigration raids on the rise. GB News finds out how many are exploiting an EU loophole to enter Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months. Visit visa?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, okay? So at the moment, okay, you're under arrest.
So I can confirm today that this government supports a third runway at Heathrow and is inviting proposals to be brought forward by the summer.
The Chancellor announces vast expansions of London's airports, but with decades before anything opened to the public, could it become another HS2? We'll be putting that to Rachel Reeves herself just before 9 a.m.
A shocking surge in shoplifting. 2,000 incidents a day as business owners cry out for help.
The greatest Britain remembered. 60 years today since Winston Churchill was laid to rest.
After 3 days lying in state, Churchill's body was taken along the Thames and through the streets of London in military procession. It was the biggest state funeral in history.
And in sport, well, topsy-turvy evening in the final night of the new Champions League opening phase. Does that make sense? Although Liverpool, they lost all, well, they ended up top of all 36 teams who qualify for the last 16, along with Arsenal and Aston Villa, whilst Manchester City have a knockout match to look forward to next month, as do Celtic.
Hello there. It's a cold start this morning, plenty of frost and also some icy stretches, but there is going to be plenty of sunshine. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, just to bring you up to date with the breaking news, first and foremost this morning, that plane crash in Washington, D.C., a mid-air collision.
A passenger jet with 64 people on board has crashed into the Potomac River after colliding with a US Army helicopter. We understand that both the helicopter and the plane are upside down in the river as we speak. And there is, of course, an extensive search and rescue operation taking place at the moment.
Yeah, I think 19 bodies have been recovered so far. The search for survivors is still ongoing in those dreadful conditions. It's freezing cold. There's obviously very poor light. There's ice in the Potomac. It's very difficult for those rescuers, but it is still a rescue operation. They are still hoping to find survivors. It may be in vain when you look at some of the imagery of what actually happened. But, of course, lots of questions as to why it happened. But first and foremost, it's trying to find those people in the Potomac at the moment. And we'll bring you fully up to date with that, of course, throughout the course of the morning.
Well, we're joined now by Lib Dem Deputy Leader and Treasury spokesperson Daisy Cooper. And, Daisy, your reaction to the scenes we're seeing out of Washington this morning, this horrific accident?
Well, it looks absolutely terrifying, doesn't it? And my heart goes out to everybody that's been involved, all the families that are waiting for news, and to the emergency services who are working in really difficult decisions. It's horrible scenes to wake up to.
Yeah, it certainly is. Look, yesterday we had the Chancellor outlining her vision for growth for this country, because they are a government for growth. It is their #1 priority, despite everything we've seen so far. Are you convinced by what seems to be driving this? I mean, the massive expansion projects, things like Heathrow.
Look, I think the government is right to go for growth because we do need growth to be able to raise the funds to put our public services back on their feet. But Heathrow expansion and other airport expansion is the wrong way to go. All of the government's own figures suggest that the amount of growth you get from it is absolutely tiny, absolutely marginal, and will take years to realise. But it will come at enormous cost, both to the climate and to those people who are living under the flight paths as well. So I think it's the wrong approach.
What do you make of the plans for Europe's Silicon Valley, that corridor between Oxford and Cambridge, that investment in AI and tech?
Well, we Liberal Democrats have long recognised that we are a European and global leader in the science sector, and this particular growth corridor between Oxford and Cambridge could potentially be really, really good. But there are particular MPs who want to have conversations with the government to make sure that the benefits of that really do reach out beyond just the centre of Oxford and Cambridge, but they actually benefit everybody across the line, that where there's new housing, there's infrastructure that comes first or alongside the new development, and it creates jobs right across all of the counties that are going to be involved in it.
Yeah, but in terms of this, I mean, there is a fundamental problem, isn't there? I mean, I know it wasn't their own policy, but the levelling up agenda is something which is important, isn't it? And if everything is being focused so much on the south and the southeast of the country, where does that leave places like the northwest and the northeast?
Well, look, I think all of us want to see everybody in this country prosper from these plans. The fact of the matter is, we Liberal Democrats have supported other things like HS2 with the Northern Powerhouse, and it's important that we see those kind of plans go forward. There certainly were questions put to the government in Parliament yesterday about whether there would be benefits to the north of England and in Scotland as well. And clearly those are questions that the government needs to answer. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on other plans that they bring forward over the coming months.
Rachel Reeves has said that she is absolutely happy to look at joining a tariff-free trading scheme with Europe. It's the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention. What do you make of that? Is that something that you would support? Because obviously it's been criticised for crossing those post-Brexit red lines.
Yes, we would support it, and we actually want the government to be far more ambitious and to work more urgently on this. The fact of the matter is that we have British businesses that are really hamstrung by red tape and reams of paperwork, whether it's garden centres trying to import or export plants, whether it's manufacturing companies trying to make great British products, whether it's British entrepreneurs trying to sell their products into Europe. And the reams of red tape are just really hammering small businesses. So yes, we do want the government to embrace these new trading relationships, and we're calling on the government to renegotiate our relationship with the EU this year and include within that the goal of negotiating a bespoke customs union that works in Britain's interests, and to make sure we get that in place by 2030.
Why would they want to do that, though, without trying to pull us in closer to the EU? Why is it? What interest is it to them to have us closer in that sense?
Well, look, it's a sort of basic rule of international trade that you want to close tradely with your closest neighbours. There's red tape in the way, and the more trade that there is, the benefits can be shared not just for the UK, but also for European countries as well. So I think having a youth mobility scheme so that young people can live and work abroad and have that on a reciprocal basis, having this bespoke customs union that allows British businesses to trade with other businesses in Europe, it's a win-win scenario. That's why we have these various trading relationships all around the world, and we want to see more ambition from this government in fixing that trading relationship and unleash the growth that could come from our small businesses.
OK, Daisy Cooper, we're out of time with you, I'm afraid, but thank you so much for your time this morning.
Yes, we're chock-a-block because the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, joins us now. Good morning to you. Does Daisy Cooper have a point when she says, actually, we need to, if we want to grow the economy, we need to have at least a better working relationship with the EU, and a bespoke deal for a customs union may be the way forward? Get rid of the red tape.
Well, look, we voted in that referendum to leave the European Union, and we are not going to go back on that decision. And I think when you get into discussions around potentially re-entering either the single market or the customs union, then you're taking a step in that direction. Now, that's not the same thing, of course, as saying that we shouldn't be looking at the frictions that there are in our trading relationships with the EU and seeing how those can be eased. And obviously there'll be further negotiations this year around that, and we will play, as a party, a constructive part in that, because we do recognise, of course, that the EU is an extremely important trading partner.
Yeah, but Lord Frost, David Frost, who was your Brexit minister for a time when you were in government, and some of you very, very sort of hard Brexit in many respects. He said to try and say that this sort of deal would be a backdoor to the EU is wrong.
Well, I think you're talking about the PEMS cooperation that's on the table, and that involves non-EU countries as well as the EU, and is about the composition of products that are made in the UK and whether they can count as solely UK or they have to have elements within them that have come from somewhere else and therefore accrue tariffs with the EU, which is rather different, I think, than discussions about the actual customs union itself in the context of the European Union. So I think that's something that, yep, certainly we can have a look at. And as with all these things, however, the devil would be in the detail.
What do you make of Rachel Reeves' speech yesterday? Are you supportive of a third runway Heathrow?
Yeah, in principle, things like a runway at an extra runway at Heathrow and various other infrastructure projects that she was talking about, absolutely subject to the detail. Where it makes sense for longer term growth, then as a responsible opposition, we will be supportive of that. But I think there's an important point here, which is that what Rachel Reeves was talking about yesterday were very long-term projects. I mean, you mentioned Heathrow, that could be the 2040s, 2050s before anything was completed. And most of these projects, you're looking at the 2030s onwards. None of that does anything to address the fundamental problem that we've got at the moment up and down the country, with businesses laying off employees because this government's come in with this huge jobs tax, which is weighing down on the economy, and a disastrous budget that has killed growth stone dead. And none of the announcements that were made yesterday are going to be leaning into rectifying that situation over the coming years. So really what the government's got to do, and the Chancellor's got to do, is to come back to the Commons on the 26th of March when she'll be giving her spring statement and explain how it is she is going to get those animal spirits in the economy going and get a much more upbeat mood in the country, and to help relieve the pressure that there is on the productive part of the UK, all those businesses up and down the land.
It's very difficult to be critical, though, isn't it, Mr. Stride, on the basis that the Conservative Party sort of shredded its reputation for economic competence over the last 14 years, and now as the official opposition, you're not putting forward any policies to say how you do things better.
Look, I've always said that there were certainly mistakes made in the past, and I was very much on the record on that. But look, we left a very good inheritance for this government. We had the fastest growth in the G7. We had near record levels of employment, near record low levels of unemployment. We'd had 13 consecutive months of real wage growth, and we brought inflation down from over 11% due to the Ukraine-Russia war down to exactly 2% on target on the day of the general election. Now, this government has entirely trashed that record and trashed that inheritance, and it's people up and down the country in various ways who are paying the price. In terms of what we should be doing, we were clear in our manifesto. Let's get a grip on welfare. We saved £5 billion from the welfare budget when I was Secretary of State at DWP. We had further plans, clear plans for £12 billion worth of savings, which were in our manifesto. We would have taken very different choices, particularly around tax, had we formed this government. We would not be taxing jobs. You know, when Rachel Reeves sat down yesterday, it was within a short period that Tesco were joining the other major supermarkets and announcing hundreds of job losses. Lloyds Bank, 136 bank branches being closed down on our high streets. That is the world that we live in at the moment. And the biggest barrier to growth at the moment is the Chancellor herself. She needs to come to the House of Commons and explain how she is going to address those more immediate issues that the country is facing.
Now, just take you back to infrastructure projects for just a moment, because isn't it hypocritical of you to support infrastructure projects for growth when you had one in HS2 and you scrapped it?
Well, there's a particular decision around HS2, which was, I think, finally a recognition. I think it was ultimately the right one, that there were better ways of investing that money into travel and travel infrastructure across and between cities, particularly up in the north. And of course, it allowed us to fund the £2 bus fare and all sorts of other things that we did at that time. But, you know, there were lots of things that we did when we were in government. We mustn't lose sight of the big successes that we have had. Crossrail, for example, Hinkley Point nuclear, which will be coming on stream in the next few years. We built 2.5 million homes since 2010, 1 million of those just in the last Parliament alone. So there was an awful lot that we did. But we recognise that there's more to do. We are under new leadership, and in terms of getting these projects moving faster and further addressing planning and some of the barriers to growth that we've had, that is the kind of stuff that I and Kemi and our team will be working on over the coming months and years.
OK, Mel Stride, appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Reddrop, who's here. What do you make of it, Oscar? I wonder how long the under new management banner can stay up.
Just in general terms, so we had a Lib Dem, we had the Tories, obviously all talking about, you know, the Labour government and Rachel Reeves' speech yesterday. It's just all so rubbish. And like, it's people talking about realities as they want them to be, rather than the realities of the present day. I mean, from Rachel Reeves' perspective, we hear a government just banging on about growth. I mean, growth is the goal, it's not the strategy. There's no strategy towards it. We had a budget that completely, and I completely agree with Mel on this, killed growth stone dead. And yet, instead of talking about the realities that we now face as a country, where their food shops are too expensive, where their bills are going through the roof, where their wages are stagnating, where national insurance rises that have hit businesses means they can't, they can't take on, a lot of people who normally get their first job, they can't take those people on. People being laid off in supermarkets, the list goes on. That's the reality. And what we had yesterday was a imagined make-believe fairy tale world, in 20, 50, 40, whatever, where we may or may not get a third runway. When we look at things, you were right to point out, HS2 probably won't happen because infrastructure in this country is a complete mess in terms of how we get things done. That's no political party's fault. So I just feel like I'm living in some make-believe world that that on the ground has no real relevance. I mean, this is a bit ranty, isn't it, for a but I actually feel quite passionate about this. And just lastly on that, and you again were right to point this out, it was just so kind of south-east, kind of southern England focused yesterday. And, people scoffed at levelling up and Boris Johnson. But you know what? Actually, what did that mean? That meant, that was something he cared about and that government cared about a lot, and that meant train stations in Darlington, it meant bus routes in Middlesbrough, and now we're just hearing about, Starmer did his AI thing the other week, and it's, the Oxbridge kind of, growth tunnel, whatever the hell it's called, and I just find it all quite depressing. and actually, and for your viewers, who are sat there now ready to go to work and do a hard day's work, they'll look at yesterday and go, how does any of this improve my situation in the coming weeks, months, or, to be frank, years?
What do you think they'll make of the 180 in terms of tone from the Chancellor as well? Because we seem to have gone from doom and gloom to her saying she's so excited for the future and so excited for Britain.
It doesn't.
The public will believe her.
Yeah, no, it doesn't ring true. And there was on the supply side reforms yesterday. In of itself, there was some really good, solid stuff from Rachel Reeves yesterday. So, in that sense, green light, go for it, good stuff. But it was an audition for her to keep her own job in many ways. That's how it read to me. She's been under intense pressure, and that kind of tonal shift of this is the worst economic situation the Tories have left since, the Second World War, to everything's rosy, everything's brilliant, growth, growth, growth. You can see why the people just feel disorientated, like members of the public, when they see politics on those terms and tonal shifts like that. It doesn't add up, it doesn't make sense, and yeah, I just think it was all a bit of a waste of time yesterday.
OK.
I'm not normally ranty, that's not normally, but
Nothing wrong with a rant every now and then. Oscar, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, guys.
Now let's have a check on the weather with Hope Krizik.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost, also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead, plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland, could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here taking taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, time is running out if you fancy bagging £50,000 absolutely tax-free. There's only 2 days left. Here's how you enter.
Lines closed.
Do stay with us. We'll be updating you on that plane crash in Washington, D.C. The latest on that next.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. It's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact-checkers. Fact-checkers in inverted commas, it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he's just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching interviews.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. It's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate, so that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, the breaking news this morning at 7:26 is that crash, mid-air collision in Washington, D.C. of an American Airlines jet heading into land at Reagan National, colliding with a US Black Hawk helicopter, a military helicopter with 3 people on board. And now it would seem they're still saying they're looking for survivors in this, still treating it as a rescue operation, but it's looking pretty grim, to be perfectly honest, for those 67 people combined on board both of those aircraft and crashing into the Potomac River in freezing conditions.
Well, let's speak to travel expert now. Simon Calder joins us live in the studio. And Simon, what do we understand happened?
This was American Airlines Flight 5342 from Wichita in Kansas, flying on a routine operation into Reagan National Airport. Now, that is a very unusual airport because the 2 international airports serving Washington, which are Baltimore, Washington, and Dulles Airport, are a long way from the city. This one, the runway is only about 3 miles south of the White House. So this is extremely well-controlled airspace. And there are very strict rules about flying in and out of there. At about 8:47 last night, the Bombardier CRJ aircraft with 60 passengers and 4 crew on board was coming into land. There was a Black Hawk helicopter which was coming from Fort Belvoir, south of the airport, and the 2 collided. It appears from information from the transponder of the aircraft that it was travelling at about 140 miles an hour and a height of 400 feet, so very, very close to landing when the collision happened. This has clearly taken place at an extremely difficult time. The 2 aircraft fell into the Potomac River, and as you've been reporting, there are 300 responders on the scene. And the last time we saw anything like this, 1982, also January, an Air Florida jet which crashed as it was taking off from Washington National, as it was then known, and crashed into the Potomac. Also, on that occasion, there were 5 survivors, but more than 70 people died.
It seems very difficult to understand, and even, I mean, President Trump himself, on Truth Social, has talked about this. The idea that when you look at and there is a video showing the collision, it's why the helicopter wouldn't see what was happening. I mean, obviously it's got its own radar. I know it doesn't have the same warning system as 2 commercial jets would have, but nevertheless, why wouldn't they see what was happening?
All of these questions will be answered in time. A lot of people in the aviation industry have expressed concern that President Trump has come out and basically said, made suggestions about what went wrong. It is almost inexplicable that in such tightly controlled airspace, because of course since 9/11 nobody can get into that area unless they have very, very strict training and controls, and for there to be 2 helicopter and civilian aircraft in such close proximity just is extraordinary, and questions will be asked. What was this training mission doing, flying at night in January, so close to the airport? But at the moment, all we can do is express deepest sympathy with the families and friends of the victims, because I fear it's much more likely than not that there will not be any survivors from this.
Yeah.
Well, we have just heard some live audio from the air traffic control saying that they described it as a fireball in the sky. Simon, stay with us. We're going to talk to you a little bit later on in the programme. But for now, we're going to speak to Associate Professor of Aviation and the Environment, Guy Grattan, who joins us on the line now. Good to see you this morning, Guy. And this is tragically reminiscent, isn't it, of another crash on the Potomac River in the 1980s?
Well, insofar as it's a crash into the Potomac River, we really don't know the circumstances of this yet, and it's too early to be talking seriously about that. What we really need to be thinking about now is about, first and foremost, is there any chance that anybody has survived and can be rescued? And then how is this going to be investigated? The actual circumstances clearly matter a huge amount, but they matter second. Right now, it's survival and then investigation, and then we should, after that, start talking about what actually went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, but in terms of what they're doing now, I mean, those conditions are very, very difficult and actually quite dangerous, aren't they, for those 300-plus personnel who are trying to organise a rescue and recovery mission?
Yes, I mean, cold, icy water like that in the dark, it's very hard to conduct an effective search. People's survival times in those conditions are not good. I mean, I can only imagine the awful conditions that those rescuers are working in, and doubtless there's superhuman effort going into it, but sadly they may not succeed.
And the skies around Reagan National, I imagine, are extremely well patrolled, aren't they? And there would have been procedures to keep planes and helicopters apart.
Every airport will have very strict procedures for where any aircraft is allowed to be at any time. Every aircraft will be in communication with air traffic control. Every aircraft will be transmitting something called ADS-B out, which transmits their location and height. And I'm unsure about the Black Hawk helicopter, but certainly the CRJ airliner will have had a system on board called TCAS, which would see other aircraft's ADS-B out signals. So we can say very certainly that something went horribly wrong here. And doubtless the investigation that will already be starting will be, I mean, all of the air traffic control tapes will be seized, all of the controllers and witnesses will be being interviewed. They will be looking hard at the maintenance records to ensure that everything that should be working on board both aircraft was working. And from that, the American National Transportation Safety Board, which is the investigating authority in America, will start to piece together this to do their job. And their job, of course, is not actually to explain the accident, although they will. Their job is to make sure this never happens again, and to issue the whole aviation community with recommendations to make sure that the awful freak set of conditions that happened last night can't happen again anywhere else.
Well, let's hope so. Guy Grattan, thanks very much indeed. Appreciate your time. Just want to return to Simon Calder, but on a different issue, Simon, because obviously over here, Heathrow's been the big topic of conversation over the last 24 hours. Rachel Reeves making it sound like it's a flagship policy that there's going to be a third runway at Heathrow. But in fact, hasn't she just announced that the government is not going to object to what Theresa May outlined in 2017? Well,
the situation we have now is that Heathrow was given permission in was recommended in 2017 that it should be able to expand, and that a third runway was the best solution to the extraordinary congestion we've got in southeast England. That was then taken forward, but it stopped partly because the Prime Minister became Boris Johnson, who vowed to lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop any expansion, and then COVID happened. And so far, Heathrow hasn't actually said formally, we'd like to build a third runway. What Rachel Reeves was saying was assuring the Chief Executive, Thomas Walby of Heathrow, we will support you in building this. They now need to go through an incredibly complicated planning process, which, even if there were no legal objections, would take 3 years before a bulldozer turned up for Boris Johnson to lie down in front of. But, of course, this is going to probably face more legal challenges than any other project in history. And so my guess is that if things go as well as they can, we might be talking about this in 2038 and 2039 in terms of expansion. What Rachel Reeves didn't talk very much about was Gatwick, which is actually going to, as it were, produce from a hat a second runway. They've already got a standby runway. They're going to move that slightly north, and then by the end of this decade, they should be able to turn into a 2-runway airport. I was down at Harmondsworth, the village, which is going to be cut in half by this last night, and a lot of people were just saying, look, if you're expanding Gatwick, then you don't need to build this runway. It is going to be a monumental battle with no quick and easy wins.
We're almost out of time with you, Simon, but I just wanted to ask what your thoughts were on the Ryanair boss, Michael O'Leary, scathing remarks yesterday to Rachel Reeves.
Oh, sure. He was just absolutely on full throttle saying that Rachel Rubbish, as he impolitely called her, didn't know what she was doing. And he said, just scrap air passenger duty. We will increase the number of passengers in and out of the UK by 50%.
OK. Simon, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. We've got the sport with Paul in a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains again today between Ayr and Stranraer. There are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to Stenline sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast. In County Down, the A51 remains closed each way along Tandragee Road in Guildford because of a fallen tree. In North Yorkshire, the A170 is blocked where a lorry's broken down between Sutton under Whetstone Cliff and Ampleforth. In South Yorkshire, the A57 is partly blocked by an accident on Manchester Road in Sheffield, causing queues. In Staffordshire, the A5 is closed eastbound from the A449 to junction 12 of the M6. The interchange after an accident. On the M69 in Leicestershire, there's a lane closed each way between junction 2 at Burbage and the M1 at Leicester after an accident. In Oxfordshire, the A40 is closed eastbound off the A415 at Whitney after a lorry overturned. And on the M4 in Berkshire, 2 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between junctions 11 and 12 near Reading, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Paul's got the sport, 7:40, Champions League, Paul.
All about the Swiss method.
Oh, yes.
All about the Swiss method, the way that things have changed with the Champions League. The final day of, well, the final night of the qualification as it is in the league of the Champions League. See, it even sounds confusing when I'm trying to explain it. But anyway, Manchester City, who looked like they were going to be in all sorts of trouble, had to beat Club Brugge last night, and they were 1-0 down, ended up turning it around and they won 3-1, which means that they have gone through now into the knockout stage. So the way it looks at the moment, or the way it is the top 8 qualify to play against each other. We'll actually go through into the main part of the draw, which is the knockouts, which happens in a month or so. But from 9 down to 24, all of those teams have to do a playoff to actually get into the final part. So anyway, Manchester City are in that because they qualified 22nd. They will play either Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, who also struggled, which is amazing. Aston Villa beat Celtic 4-2, although Celtic were 2-0 down. We feared for Celtic after 5 minutes, but then Celtic came back. Aston Villa won the game. Celtic have qualified. They will go into that playoff as well, which is next month. So, ironically, they'll play either Real Madrid or Bayern Munich as well. The draw's made on Friday. Aston Villa qualified 8th, which means they have gone through into the round of 16, so they're OK. Liverpool, although they lost against PSV Eindhoven yesterday, they ended out top. So they are basically top of the Champions League, which is very impressive, but it doesn't really mean too much apart from the fact they're through to the round of 16 as well. And also Barcelona, because they drew against Atalanta, that means that Manchester City are in trouble. Now they've gone through, but Liverpool ended up top. And Arsenal are third in the whole thing because they beat Girona 2-1. Is there too many numbers?
It's very confusing.
You know, I don't like it. It's a result, but it is a real confusing situation. But it's all done and dusted now, and then we have to go through the whole thing again tonight with the Europa League. Spurs are playing Elfsborg. Are you familiar with their work?
Elfsborg, Swedish.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I know you're familiar with their work. They're 20th at the moment. Spurs are 6th. So they basically need to win, Spurs, to then not have to do the little knockouty qualify bit. FCSB, which were formerly known as Steaua Bucharest of Romania, will be playing. So Manchester United are playing them. They're 4th. Marcus Rashford out again. Surprise, surprise. And Rangers, who are 13, play Union Saint-Gilloise from
famous Belgian side.
Famous Belgian side. Everybody's favourite Belgians. They will be playing Rangers tonight. That was excellent. It was a lot.
It was a lot.
You know, I don't want to confuse anybody, but that's just Swiss method.
Thanks, Koiji.
Thank
you. We'll be going through the papers next, but first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Strong winds across the Canary Islands, also some wet and windy weather for the Balearic Islands, but largely settled elsewhere across eastern parts of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece and parts of Italy. But as we move our way westwards, this is where we'll find the unsettled weather, so some heavy showers, also some strong winds at times. But further west, largely settled as high pressure dominates, but that is going to bring in some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife. But that's where we'll see the best of the temperatures, and also largely settled as we head towards the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data. But it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right. But before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories. And what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there. Now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source and then summarises them into one alert.
It looks to me like
you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
Or
so the BBC
GB News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes. But when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it and sends it out even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's have a quick look through the papers for you this morning with political commentator Alex Armstrong and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Good morning, you two.
Morning.
Scarlett, Kemi Badenoch is, according to Keir Starmer, the next lettuce.
Well...
He's got a nerve.
Well,
it's rude, actually, isn't it?
No, I think so. What happened was that last week at Prime Minister's Questions, Kemi said to Keir, "You're a lawyer, not a leader," and she rather liked that. So she tried it again yesterday and said, "You're a lawyer, not a leader." And so Keir said back to her, "You're not a lawyer, you're not a leader, you're just a lettuce. And how long will you last?"
The next lettuce.
I can just imagine him practicing it in the mirror, because they
next lettuce.
His advisors had clearly said to him, if she comes out with that line again, because it did do very well, asking him views, they said, you go straight back and say, you're not a lawyer, you're not a leader, but you are next lettuce. What do you think of it, Alex?
Do you know what? I tend to agree, actually. I think she's dead on arrival.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, look at the polls. She hasn't seem anything. In fact, the Tories seem to dropping in the polls, and Reform, with 5 MPs, are surging it on the back of that failure to capitalise. And, she's not putting out any policies. The message is kind of always the same. PMQs doesn't seem to be landing. She doesn't be landing too many blows. And look, she is new to the job. You've got to give her some time. But
she has had a few months.
I mean, I would be unfair if I didn't give her the same criticism I give to Keir Starmer and the Labour Party.
What did you make of her aiming all of her questions at Keir Starmer yesterday on the employment bill? That was an interesting approach.
What was interesting is that she mentioned a couple of weeks ago that she's going to come back to, and she still hasn't come back to that thing. I'm not going to talk about it in the morning, but we'll maybe speak about it later on in the day. It just seems that she's not talking about things the public are interested in, things that people want to oppose. There's lots of hot stuff going on at the moment, and she just can't seem to find her feet on what it is the Tories are anymore.
And the problem with the employment bill is lots and lots of people are workers. And actually, so, the minimum wage goes up, which is great for everybody on the minimum wage, which is millions of poor people. And we know that there's a real problem with, 3 out of 10 children live in poverty. And so they'll have parents on the minimum wage. And actually, we've got the gig economy with people just being let go. They're on 0 hours contracts. An awful lot of people, and even if it's not them, it's their friends or it's their children, they want them to have proper employment rights. And that's what Kemi doesn't seem to understand. And then when she does get into stuff, she gets it wrong.
Well, I just think she focuses on things like steaks and sandwiches, and I just feel this is lost on the public, and attacking people who take lunch breaks is just not. It's just not part of modern British, conversation anymore. So I think the Tories need to be looking very, very inward about what they represent. And mostly, I saw you had Mel Stride on that not that long ago. It's like, you didn't really have anything to say about what are your policies, Mel. What would you do if there's a snap election?
Well, they're not doing policy yet. They're taking their time with policy, aren't they? They'll pick up things as they come past, like we saw with the grooming gangs, but they're not going to put out their own policy.
Yeah,
but that's the problem, isn't it? So on the Southport killer, whose name I am not even going to say, so Kemi says it's all about, that he wasn't properly integrated because his parents were refugees. I mean, there is not one shred of evidence about that. I mean, this is somebody who, just was overcome with rage and hate and actually wanted to do a school massacre. I mean, this was a really dangerous person. It had nothing to do...
But more importantly on that, because it's about Kemi Badenoch's performance, she was meant to come back to that topic. She said, after the case is closed, I'm going to talk about it. And regardless of all those things, you could have talked about the government's communication during that period. Were they right to say that that he wasn't a terrorist? Were they right? You could pick up on all those things. She just failed to capitalise on it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right, let's talk about something ridiculous for the last couple of minutes, and that's Bridget, what's she called? Bridget Jones.
Bridget Jones!
Renée Zellweger. Can I say, I don't care about any of this.
Don't you look at the films?
No.
Oh, really?
I'm not really familiar.
Right.
The films are great, to be fair. You're missing out there.
The films are great. Actually, so are the books. The films are great, and Renée Zellweger is famous for putting on weight to become Bridget Jones, though now she seems to have lost the weight again, and she changes shape.
Wait, is there another Bridget Jones movie coming out? Something? I don't know. I'm not an avid Bridget Jones.
Mad About the Bridget Jones is a single. This is not giving away anything. Bridget Jones is a single. I think 10 years.
10 years makes you a cougar.
Well, I think 5 often makes you a cougar. And then the real thing is Joan, what's her name, and Percy.
Oh, you've lost us there.
This whole conversation, I'm a little bit lost, if I'm being honest. But there we go.
I would have thought you'd have been really into Bridget Jones.
Yeah. I
thought it would have been very
you. It's my cup of tea, clearly. It's my cup of tea.
Well, it's coming out on Valentine's Day.
Oh, is it? Oh,
so lots and lots of loving couples can go and look at a loving couple, and they can go there romantically.
Is Hugh Grant in it, this one?
I
hope so.
He's great, actually.
He's very good. Oh, he's in the trailer, apparently. He's the godfather of the child.
Oh, right. Well, I hope he's still... I think Hugh Grant being evil is just wonderful.
Yeah. Isn't that the best pivot he's made later on in his career?
That was a great film, by the way. That was a really good film. I really like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Right, thank you both. We'll see you a little bit later on. We've got all the main news coming out of Washington, D.C. in just a moment.
Let's get checked now on the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost, also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead, plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland, could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replace trains again today between Ayr and Stranraer. There are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to Stena Line sailings between Caerhun and Belfast. In County Down, the A51 remains closed each way along Tandragee Road in Guildford because of a fallen tree. In South Yorkshire, the A57 is partly blocked by an accident on Manchester Road in Sheffield, causing queues. In Staffordshire, the A5 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between the A449 and the M6 at junction 12, causing delays. On the M69 in Leicestershire, there's a lane closed each way after an accident between junction 2 at Burbage and the M1 at Leicester. In Oxfordshire, the A40 is closed eastbound off the A415 at Witney after an accident yesterday, causing delays towards Oxford. On the M4 in Berkshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between junctions 11 and 12 near Reading, causing delays. And in Devon, the A377 is partly blocked by an accident in Crediton.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box.
Nottingham, where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news this morning and a horror plane crash in the States.
The terrifying moment, an American Airlines flight collides mid-air into a US Army helicopter above the US Capitol.
Well, now, the desperate search for survivors goes on.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
Well, 300 emergency responders are searching the waters as officials admit we don't know if there are any survivors.
Also today, immigration raids on the rise. GB News finds out how many are exploiting an EU loophole to enter Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, okay? So at the moment, okay, you're under arrest.
So I can confirm today that this government supports a third runway at Heathrow and is inviting proposals to be brought forward by the summer.
The Chancellor announces vast expansions of London's airports, but with decades before anything opens to the public, could it become another HS2? We'll be putting that to Rachel Reeves herself just before 9 a.m.
The greatest Britain remembered. It's 60 years ago today since Winston Churchill was laid to rest.
After 3 days lying in state, Churchill's body was taken along the Thames and through the streets of London in military procession. It was the biggest state funeral in history.
And in sport news, in the Champions League, although Liverpool lost, they top all 36 teams who qualify for the last 16. Along with Arsenal and Aston Villa, Manchester City have got a knockout match to look forward to next month, as do Celtic. And it's the turn of Spurs, Manchester United and Rangers in the Europa League tonight.
Hello there. It's a cold start this morning, plenty of frost and also some icy stretches, but there is going to be plenty of sunshine. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
So the breaking news this morning is that plane crash in Washington, D.C.
A passenger jet with 64 people on board has crashed into the Potomac River after colliding with a US Army helicopter.
Now, so far, 19 bodies have been recovered. The Coast Guard, police, divers, rescue and ambulance units are all at the scene.
Well, US President Donald Trump has been posting on his social media platform Truth Social, where he's condemned air traffic control at Reagan National Airport, saying it's a bad situation that looks as though it should have been prevented.
We are getting some word on who's on board or who was on board. There was word coming out of Russia about two former world champion figure skaters, a married couple who were on board, but we couldn't get what their source was on that. However, since then, US Figure Skating, which is the American governing body for the sport, has confirmed that several members of its skating community were on board the flight. We're devastated, they say, by this unspeakable tragedy and hold the victims' families closely in our hearts. So they've been at the National Development Camp in Wichita in Kansas, from where that flight took off.
We've also got some tracking data here which shows that the river rescue began about 23 minutes after that crash, which happened at 9 p.m. local time in Washington. So those rescue boats getting to the scene very, very quickly, departing just 5 minutes after the crash. But so far, nobody yet has been rescued from that water.
Let's talk to travel expert Simon Calder, who's here. What can we glean at this very, very early stage, Simon?
Well, there has clearly been a desperate tragedy, and very, very sadly, it appears that we are talking about 64 lives being lost on American Eagle Flight 5342 and a further 3 on board the Black Hawk helicopter. Perhaps it's worth explaining the very unusual position of Washington's Reagan National Airport. It opened in 1941 and it is extremely close to the city centre, just 3 miles or so south of the White House. It's very popular, as you would imagine, with travellers because it is so close, and it has said to have the busiest runway in the US. Of course, being so close to the heart of government, it is extremely closely controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration, which itself is based in Washington, D.C. And while President Trump has expressed his thoughts about air traffic control, it seems, something at this stage absolutely inexplicable has happened. Clearly, if you are these skies are watched with extraordinary closeness, and for there to be a collision like this, and mid-air collisions are thankfully extremely rare, it does raise an enormous number of questions, which in the coming days we will find out more about.
With the proximity to the White House, would it be usual practice for Black Hawk helicopters to be operating that closely to the airport, do you think?
Well, actually, as you can imagine, there is a lot of military helicopter activity in Washington, D.C. The president uses one himself, Marine One. There is a US Army base, Fort Belvoir, about 15 miles south of the airport, and that would normally be involved in helicopter operations. What we understand is that this is a training flight, but for it to be happening at night in January, so close to the approach to Washington National Airport, seems extraordinary, and because, of course, all pilots, whether they're helicopter or aircraft, are very, very absolutely focused on safety, and in particular avoiding any other traffic that is flying at the time. just, as I say, inexplicable is the only word I can use at this stage.
What do we know about the technology, which certainly would be on board the jet? It's difficult to say quite what would be on board a Black Hawk, I guess.
Exactly right, yes. All commercial aircraft that are flying in Western countries has something called TCAS, which is a collision avoidance system, which, following, very sadly, some mid-air collisions, is designed to tell the pilots to take avoiding action in very different directions. So if you have two aircraft which are apparently converging, one will be told turn left and climb, the other one will be told turn right and descend. And this works extremely successfully in many, many situations, lots of them which you never ever get to hear about because collisions are avoided. As you say, I'm not an expert on what equipment the Black Hawk helicopter would have had, but clearly the pilots would be aware, one presumes, that they are in the airspace of the busiest runway in America and have reacted appropriately.
What are we to make of President Trump's posting on Truth Social saying that the crash should have been prevented, pointing criticism at least at air traffic control? And now we know that these final communications between air traffic control and the aircraft, this is from Associated Press news agency, reporting that the runway changed. They asked the incoming plane if they could land on a shorter runway at Reagan National. The plane said they could. The controllers cleared it to land on this new runway, runway 33, and it was adjusted 30 seconds before the collision. The controller then asked the helicopter if it could see that plane. This is what Donald Trump was referring to. The controller made another call to that helicopter just moments later, saying, please pass behind the plane, and seconds later they crashed. What do you make of that?
This is one of those, and thank you for that, that begins to perhaps be one of the many elements that are typically involved in an air crash, which thankfully are extremely rare, that there's a number of things that happen which combine, and if any of them individually had never happened, there would not have been a crash. It's called the kind of Swiss cheese model. All the holes in the Swiss cheese line up and the result is tragedy. But yes, you can maybe imagine circumstances in which the Black Hawk helicopter was of the impression that the aircraft were landing on one runway, which runs north-south. It was then switched to another runway, which is off at an angle, and there may have been some breakdown of communication, and who knows, but it's the sort of ingredient that the National Transportation Safety Board, who are based in Washington, D.C., will be looking at as in the days to come.
And presumably the black boxes in all of this will be crucial, because, I mean, one thing we know from that conversation is that there was no response from the aircraft. So whether there was a communication issue there, will have to be looked into. Where are we, Simon, at the moment? Because it's a worrying time. We've had 3 significant air crashes in just 5 weeks.
You're exactly right. We had the terrible crash on Christmas Day involving an Azerbaijan aircraft, which was effectively shot down in Russia. But by accident, it limped across the Caspian Sea and then crashed with the loss of most of those on board. We then saw the horrific accident in Korea, an aircraft coming in from Bangkok, which crash-landed, and very sadly, all but 2 of the people on board died. And this morning, a lot of viewers may be thinking, goodness, flying is getting more dangerous. Please be absolutely assured that aviation is pretty much as safe as any industry could ever get. Bear in mind that British and Irish airlines have, I think, the best safety record in the world. The 2 safest airlines in the world in terms of the number of passengers flown without an accident are Ryanair and EasyJet, and British Airways also extraordinarily safe. I'm actually flying tonight on a British Airways plane, and while of course I have every sympathy for the family and friends of the victims of this terrible accident, I am not concerned that there is any heightened risk. The whole aviation community is quite rightly obsessed with safety.
Yeah, quite right. Simon, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's take you to the latest in the Middle East, where thankfully that ceasefire between Israel and Gaza is continuing to hold, and that means they're moving forward onto the next stage. More hostages being released. 3 Israeli hostages. Adam Berger is the first of those to be released today. He's now been handed to the Red Cross in Gaza. He's just 20 years old. This, I think, is in Khan Yunis in Gaza. We're also expecting 5 Thai nationals to be released today.
We're also expecting to see the military observer, Agam Berger, Arbil Uhed and Gadi Moses. Those are 3 names. 2 women and 1 8-year-old man there set for release today.
Yes, Gadi Moses, 80 years old, held since the 7th of October 2023. One can only imagine what he's been through as an elderly gentleman, what that has done to his health in all of this. As we see from this procedure, they are taken by the Red Cross, the International Committee of the Red Cross. They are then taken to a base where they're flown by helicopter to Israel to be treated in hospital and then to be met by family and friends as well. It's also worth pointing out that as part of the reciprocal deal from this, 110 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons will be released. Now, this normally happens a few moments after the vehicles, the Red Cross vehicles, leave with those hostages on board, and once they clear that site, then those prisoners are released from that prison in Israel.
Well, we've just got some information from Agam Berger, who was part of the all-female military unit when she was captured on October the 7th. She was the last member of that unarmed military unit to remain in Gaza. 1 was killed in Gaza, another was rescued, and 4 others have been released under that ceasefire deal. Her family have said they are overjoyed and moved by the return of 4 other female soldiers, and they can't wait to embrace Agam Berger, who we know now has just been handed over to the Red Cross by armed Hamas militants.
We'll keep an eye on that as that progresses, but it is thankful that this is proceeding. It's a 6-week deal, this first part of all of this, and of course it's very thin ice, as these ceasefires always are, but there's been so many problems. Even last Saturday there were a lot of problems with this, but thankfully it all went ahead.
And appears to be holding. Let's hope it continues to.
Right, let's get a quick check on the weather for you with Honor.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost, also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead, plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland, could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, 17 minutes past 8, we just need to tell you about the Great British Giveaway because there's just one day left to enter. £50,000 in your bank account, totally tax-free. You can spend it any way you like, so make sure you don't miss out. Here are all of the details that you need.
Lines close tomorrow on your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
It's such a nice feeling. Just go for it. It's one text, and if I can win, anyone can win.
I was on cloud nine. I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 632.
And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a destination, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop. You need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollals and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:22. Let's just remind you of that news that we're waking up to this morning. The American Airlines flight, which collided in midair with a US Army helicopter in Washington, D.C. This was above Reagan Washington National Airport, about 9 p.m. local time in Washington. 64 people on board that plane. 3 US Army soldiers on that Black Hawk helicopter, both crashed into the Potomac River. A rescue operation is now taking place in very complex, cold, dark, windy conditions. So far, reports from US media that 19 bodies have been recovered from the water.
It's incredible to try and get your head around what has happened here. There's imagery, video of the crash itself. Experts we've talked to this morning saying it is just inexplicable how this could have happened around Reagan National, particularly because it is right in the heart of Washington, D.C. It's just a mere 3 miles from the White House. And so, as you can imagine, the safety procedures around such an airport, close to so many populated areas, extremely tight. So just how this has happened at all is a mystery. The NTSB, of course, will be taking over this investigation and looking at all of this. But before all that gets underway, it is about a rescue operation, although unfortunately, it has to be said, it's looking less and less likely that there will be survivors from this, but they are still calling this a rescue rather than a recovery operation. So there is still some hope, but it's not looking very good at the moment.
We've just heard from the fire chief on that note, who's described the river as a large black spot. And he was asked if there are any survivors, and he simply said he doesn't know if anyone has survived that crash, but he does say they are still out there working. It is 3:30 local time there in Washington, D.C., 3:30 in the morning. But he says he's going to continue working on that river throughout the night. Also to say the US Army and the Defence Department have begun an investigation into the crash. We've just heard from Pete Hegseth, who, of course, has just been sworn in as Defence Secretary only days ago. He's just posted on X saying that that has been started immediately.
Bring you fully up to date throughout the course of the day on that, of course. But in the meantime, let's have a look at increasing numbers of EU nationals who are apparently abusing the common travel arrangement, the CTA, to enter the UK and work illegally.
Many Romanians and Bulgarians in particular are avoiding border checks by crossing from the Republic, while others simply arrive on tourist visas and then find work.
Well, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, was given exclusive access to accompany immigration enforcement teams who've increased the number of raids they carry out by a third since Labour came to power.
Under the cover of darkness, immigration officers and police move into this large agricultural business in North Wales.
No one up there? No, I'm in touch.
They're on the hunt for immigrants working here illegally. And it doesn't take long to find their first suspect.
On you now?
The man they've detained is a Romanian national.
What's your permission to be in the UK? You got a visa to come to the UK?
For several years after Brexit, EU citizens enjoyed a grace period when authorities didn't prosecute those working here unlawfully. But now, if they breach the rules, they're treated like any other illegal immigrant.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
OK. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, OK? So at the moment, OK, you're under arrest, OK? For breaching the conditions of your leave to remain in the UK. Do you understand?
As fellow officers search for other suspects, the Romanian has walked back to his accommodation on the site.
Anybody else in your caravan?
Inside a cluster of caravans, more suspects, all Romanian, are being questioned.
Where is your passport?
Officers told me they see very significant numbers of Romanians and Bulgarians in particular abusing UK immigration rules to work here illegally. An increasingly popular means of arrival is through the common travel arrangement with Ireland, and some of those detained here may well have come through that route.
We've got individuals that we've got a trace of them exiting the country. We've got no trace of them coming into the country. So we haven't bottomed that out yet, but what we found in the past is that they will have come through Ireland and then through the common travel area, you know, avoiding the controls.
In nearby offices, another group of Romanians are being questioned. Although the Home Office was unable to provide us with a detailed breakdown of the number of EU nationals arrested on immigration offences over the past year, this enforcement team told me it's definitely on the rise, and many are coming through Ireland.
Not just the EEA nationals that are going through Ireland, it's, you know, it's other foreign nationals, because it's, you know, it can be like the back door into the UK. So you know, you've got the small boats where people are coming in illegally. You've got other clandestine that come in the back of lorry, but obviously there's the abuse of the CTA as well.
Many others are simply arriving on tourist visas and then finding employment in breach of the law. As officers question the suspects with the help of interpreters over the phone, it quickly becomes apparent why some are willing to take the risk.
OK, so how much do you get paid?
1,000 a week.
£1,000 per week.
For those employing illegal workers, these enforcement raids can be very costly indeed, with fines of up to £45,000 per illegal worker. Yet right across the country, thousands of employers continue to flout the law. Since Labour came to power, immigration enforcement raids have increased by more than a third over the same period the year before. But despite more than 3,000 arrests over the past 6 months, it's still only a tiny fraction of the number of illegal immigrants here, with unofficial estimates putting that figure at more than 1.5 million. Mark White, GB News, North Wales.
Well, we're joined now by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Good to see you this morning, Mark. And just listening to you there, raids have increased by a third under Labour since they came into government. I mean, clearly they're trying their utmost here to tackle illegal migration.
Yes, indeed. Well, you had the previous government talking tough on illegal migration and going after the gangs as well and increasing raids. But the fact is, since Labour have come into power in the past 6 months, those immigration enforcement officers have never been busier. But as I alluded to in the report there, it really is just a drop in the ocean. There are no official numbers for the number of people working illegally in the grey or black illegal economy, whatever you want to call it. But it is very significant indeed. We've been quite exercised, understandably, over recent days about the news that the official population of the UK is likely to increase well north of 70,000 within 70 million within a few years. Well, you know, that doesn't even begin to address those who are working here illegally. And the small boats are, of course, the most visible manifestation of those who are flouting our border controls. But the fact is, the vast majority of people who are coming here to work illegally are coming here through much more mundane means, coming over a student visa, on student visas, coming on visitor visas, and then just finding work in breach of those visa rules. And others, as we reported, they're coming through the Irish border from the Republic of Ireland because there are no border checks. It was the deal, as part of the deal with Brexit, was that there would be no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. But one inherent weakness in that is that anyone from the European Union could just land in Dublin and then make their way unchecked over the border and into the UK.
I mean, which begs the obvious question, Mark, what on earth can be done about this? I mean, you describe it as a loophole, but it's absolutely huge, and it seems very difficult to know how you can actually close it.
Well, I think, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think it is very difficult, if not impossible, under the current policy of allowing an open border between the European Union, effectively, you know, the Republic of Ireland, and into the UK. There are operations, spot checks that take place at some of the ports, like Holyhead, of course, which is a main ferry route from Dublin, but these only ever pick up a fraction of those who are coming over. The vast majority of those coming over pass into the UK undetected. And it is such a political hot potato, talks of any kind of more stringent checks on the border between the Republic and between the UK, that I think it's something that the authorities seem prepared to live with, even though it is obviously a very significant weakness and backdoor into the UK.
OK, Mark, for now, thank you.
Now do stay with us. Still to come, Paul Coit will be here with all your sport. That's next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains again today between Ayr and Stranraer. There are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to Centreline sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast. In County Down, the A51 remains closed along Tandragee Road in Guildford because of a fallen tree. In Gwynedd, the A487 is closed in both directions to the southwest of Bangor between the Evelyn-Helly roundabout and the A55 at Park Menai. In Staffordshire, the A5 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident towards the M6 at junction 12. On the M69 in Leicestershire, there's a lane closed each way after an accident between junction 2 at Burbage and the M1 near Leicester. In Oxfordshire, the A40 is closed eastbound off the A415 at Witney after an accident yesterday. And on the M4 in Berkshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 11 and 12 near Reading, causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:35, just to bring you up to date with that breaking news, that plane crash in Washington, D.C. An American Airlines flight heading into Reagan National, colliding with a Black Hawk helicopter as it was coming in to land. Just impossible to work out what has gone wrong with all of this. There is a rescue operation underway, but it is feared at this stage there won't be any survivors. 67 people involved in total. 19 bodies have been recovered so far from the Potomac River.
And of course, rescue is working in complex conditions. It is the early hours of the morning in Washington, D.C. It's windy, it's cold, it's pitch black. And as the rescue authorities have just been saying in a press conference, they're describing that river as a large black spot, and they say at this point in time they don't know if there will be any survivors. We heard the audio from air traffic control a little bit earlier on, and they were describing it as a fireball, that explosion in midair between that American Airlines flight and the Black Hawk helicopter. So that rescue operation is taking place in the river now, and we'll of course update you throughout the programme on GB News.
Right. Time to have a look at the sport for you this morning. Paul Coit is here. Should we talk Champions League?
I think we had better, really, because it's finally been worked out, this first Champions League
league part of it with 36 teams in there, and it was, you know, it changed a lot, and they've actually changed the whole system and hoping that it was going to make it more exciting. I was cynical. Well, you know what? I think it has, and I was quite cynical about it, thinking, it's just a money-making exercise as always.
The Swiss aren't known for being exciting.
The Swiss are, well, all depends which. William Tell was extremely exciting, and so is Roger Federer, but that's all I've got. But Manchester City beat Club Brugge 3-1. Now, Manchester City were in deep trouble of being knocked out of the Champions League. Absolutely had to win, and although they were 1-0 down, they did manage to. But now, instead of, if you actually qualify for the top 16, go into that. If you're in the first 8, by the way, you go straight through without a playoff. Manchester City have got to play either Real Madrid, who are also way down there, or Bayern Munich. Not an easy tie to then go into the last 16. Pep Guardiola was asked what he thought about the draw.
We deserve it. If we can do it better, maybe we were lucky. I don't know if they are happy to play against us, but it's what it is. So it's no complaint at all. So it's Bayern or Madrid or Bayern. We're going to face them. So.
There you go. It is what it is. It is what it is. But he's right, though, because the thing is, they're going to probably be more upset that they've got to play Manchester City than probably Man City playing them. Yeah. So we'll see. So that happens next month.
So why is it that you've got clubs like Arsenal that are in the top 16? You've got Liverpool on top.
Yes, Liverpool are on top.
And then you've got some of these huge clubs like...
It's bizarre.
Like Man City at the bottom, at the bottom, and Real Madrid.
Well, the thing is, it hasn't worked out probably in UEFA's favour because they expected that those teams would automatically qualify. And if, for example, you're in the top 2, you cannot play anybody else in the top 6 until at least the semi-final. So they expected that all those big teams would be in there and they would play each other later on, semi-final, final. Whereas now we've got this knockout part, which is just to get into the last 16, which is featuring some of these big clubs, so we're going to lose them. So how they feel about that, I don't know, but it keeps it interesting for us, so that's fine. Now, Aston Villa, they beat Celtic 4-2, and they were in and out of that top 8 5 times during the evening. Something changes in another game because all 36 teams were playing at the same time, so eventually they get through. Celtic, they've gone into a playoff, and ironically, they've got to play either Real Madrid or Bayern Munich as well because they're just next to where Man City are in the league. Are we kind of making sense of this?
Yeah, just make it exciting.
That's the Swiss for you. It's not me, that's the Swiss for you. But interesting with Aston Villa because the transfer window closes the start of next week. And there's 2 strikers. Everybody wants a striker now. Ollie Watkins played for England, of course, in the World Cup, scored a great goal in the World Cup. He's wanted by Arsenal, and Arsenal have put bids in for him, which has kind of upset Unai Emery and Aston Villa because, you know, they don't want to disrupt anything. So they're going to have to pay a lot of money if they want him. But Ollie Watkins grew up an Arsenal fan, so you would think he wanted to go. And the other striker they've got, John Duran, 21 years old, and he looks like he's going to go to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia as a 21-year-old. And you know why he's going there?
Yeah.
You know exactly why he's going there. But anyway, Europa League tonight. Spurs are playing. Spurs play Elfsborg. FCSB play Manchester United. Rangers against Union Saint-Gilloise. So big games tonight.
Lovely stuff, Paul. Thank you.
We'll be going through the papers next, but first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Strong winds across the Canary Islands, also some wet and windy weather for the Balearic Islands, but largely settled elsewhere across eastern parts of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece and parts of Italy. But as we move our way westwards, this is where we'll find the unsettled weather, so some heavy showers, also some strong winds at times. But further west, largely settled as high pressure dominates, but that is going to bring in some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife. But that's where we'll see the best of the temperatures and also largely settled as we head towards the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Well, specialist from Woolly and Wallace Auction House, Alexandra Aguilar, joins me now. Alexandra, how lovely to see you. And I wondered whether you were going to bring the jewellery in. You're actually wearing the jewellery. So shall we begin with the bracelet?
Right, so it's a diamond line bracelet, as you can see. It's really a beautiful thing. It's made of 27 diamonds with a yellow tint, and they are mounted on yellow gold, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful piece. But there's more to it, and as you mentioned, it's the provenance. It comes from the collection of Elizabeth Taylor, really one of the queens of Hollywood, and it was given to her by Michael Jackson.
Have you any idea why Michael Jackson gave her such a magnificent gift?
They were very, very good friends. They were friends for over 20 years, and he knew her love for diamonds, for jewelry, and we know that they exchanged many presents, including this fantastic bracelet.
Would that have been made new at that time?
Yes, I believe so.
We're talking, what, about the 1970s or something like that?
Oh, maybe a little bit later.
Later, 80s?
Yes, that's right. But what's particularly interesting about this one is all the 27 diamonds have the same colour. And it's very difficult to find stones with the same colour, with the same yellow tint. So it makes it particularly beautiful and particularly special.
Why do you think it will go for about £70,000?
It's... well, it is a beautiful piece. It's very wearable, as you can see, and there is the provenance is amazing. Jewelry from the collection of Elizabeth Taylor is very sought after, of course.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
8:45. Let's just remind you of the breaking news in Washington, D.C., where an American Airlines jet has collided with a Black Hawk helicopter. That was as the jet was coming in to land at Reagan National. A mid-air explosion over the Potomac. Both aircraft in the river. 19 bodies recovered so far.
The rescue operation is, of course, taking place as we speak, but very difficult conditions for those first responders. It's a windy night in Washington, D.C., temperatures as low as -1, reports of chunks of ice actually floating in that water, so it's desperately cold. Very, very difficult conditions for those first responders. And speaking at a press conference earlier, they confirmed they didn't know if there would be any survivors. But any update we get here, we will, of course, bring to you at GB News.
Just to let you know, we're standing by for the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, who will be joining us hopefully in about 8 or 9 minutes. So don't go anywhere as we wait for her. We're going to go through the papers with political commentator Alex Armstrong and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Good morning, you two.
Good morning.
Can we start with what's happening with more Israeli hostages, and indeed Thai hostages who've been held since the 7th of October, being released today?
Yeah, well, it's what a relief for them, for their families, for everybody to see this conflict finally coming to some sort of closure and innocent people being returned home. I know Scarlett's been digging into this in the group, so actually, Scarlett,
so
why don't you take it away?
The one person who has been released, Agam Berger, who's a 20-year-old soldier, and she was what was called a spotter, and there were a group of them near the Gaza the Gaza fence who looked over to find out what was going on. And they kept on saying, for the week before it all appallingly happened, there are very odd things going on. It looks as though they're doing practice hostage taking. It looks, and the men above them said, no, you're getting all of this wrong. They'd been saying, and the mother of one of them who was killed, said, what were they supposed to do? Nobody was listening to them. And so they were unarmed. And so the first thing they did was when Hamas poured over the fence, they took them and killed some of them and took the rest of them hostage. And it is really, really good that she's out. But actually, the Israeli authorities have a lot to answer for.
There was a massive intelligence failing.
Huge.
With all of this, and that is going to have to obviously be looked into. What is interesting with this is, I mean, Agenberger has been released. She's now, which has been taken. Well, here we are. This is pictures from earlier on, just as she was being given over to the International Committee of the Red Cross, but now back in Israeli custody, thankfully. But there are another 2 Israelis and 5 Thai hostages that are being released in a different later on today, but we haven't got the details of that. It seems to be more staggered than we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, but also I didn't even know there were Thai hostages. And you think, where would... I mean, this is so wonderful that she's alive, she's well.
Well, thank goodness she looks OK as well.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what she's been through, but actually she's going back, and she's going back to her family and I hope her friends, and it's wonderful. But I had no idea there were Thai hostages, and you think, where were they taken? And... we haven't heard about them.
Looking at those images there as well, I mean, one of the things that will strike a lot of people watching that is seeing the Hamas men in uniform still with their weapons. And filming it, and I see I won't reread the words, that's some propaganda behind that.
Well, that's the interesting. They're placed in front of a propaganda sheet.
They are.
And one would imagine told to wave. Because who are they waving to?
Well, quite. And, rather than this being some sort of... Look, when you pan around and see the shot there of the rubble, they could have made it what I would have thought is a much better propaganda tool to show, actually, here's what's happened to Gaza. They don't seem to be focused on... They seem to be focused on their message, quite clearly. Typical old Hamas, isn't it?
Absolutely. Hamas are not interested in what's happened to Gaza. Hamas want to... they have a double message.
Yes.
And it's to the Israelis, we're still here, and, frankly, it's to the Palestinian Authority, to Fatah, and don't think you're coming into Gaza.
I think that's what
really difficult.
That was what gripped me looking at those images. I hadn't seen them before, and I thought, actually, they're trying to send a message. We're not gone. We're still here, and we're in charge.
They are using these hostage exchanges, it would seem, as a show of strength, isn't it? They come out in numbers. They've got their... I mean, they would, wouldn't they?
What would you expect?
But,
this is the thing.
We just heard that Agenberger's friends have all gathered in an apartment. They're watching her release. That room is covered in Israeli flags.
This is Hostage Square, is it, in Tel Aviv? It could well be hot. Anyway, it's Israeli gathering to watch this because the big monitor's up. If it is Hostage Square, indeed. But of those other 2 Israelis yet to be released, Arbel Yehud and Gadi Moses. Now, Gadi Moses is 80 years old.
Oh, 80-year-old man.
I'm so glad he's alive.
Well, but you can... as awful as it is when these young people, are taken, obviously you feel for everybody, but physically, for an 80-year-old, an older person, to endure all that time in captivity, it's going to be harder in one sense, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of 80-year-olds are on medication, and we know that's not what they were getting. I mean, obviously, this guy is pretty tough, and. In that, compared to a lot of the other hostages, quite lucky that he's still... he must have been quite strong because, we know a lot... Some of them have been killed, but some of them have also just died because, the things went... And there was no medication, so if you were ill, that was it.
Well, let's hope he's in good health. But this is, of course, part of this first 6-week part of this ceasefire deal, which is thankfully holding so far, although it is very fragile, where we are seeing women, children and men over the age of 50 being released.
Thank God.
So Gadi Moses being, of course, one of those men. And let's hope he's in good health. You can't imagine what he's been through.
Yeah.
No, they all seem to be looking physically sort of all right on their release, but heaven knows what is actually going on. And thankfully they are taken straight to hospital with it. And
absolutely, and also not to forget all those people from overseas that aren't Israelis as well. I mean, you know, there's a lot of focus on the Israeli hostages, but of course we've seen British hostages, Thai hostages, which I didn't even know about until I heard the news this morning, frankly. So this is an international crisis. It's not just an Israeli one. So it's so pleasing to hear that so many are coming back home.
Well, on those other 2 hostages, we know that they are going to be released from 2 separate locations, hopefully later on this morning. That's what's expected. And of course, this is an exchange, and Israel will later release 110 Palestinians that have been held in Israeli prisons. And we'll bring that to you on GB News.
Yeah. Quite how we look at this next subject, I'm not entirely sure, but it's in the Times, Scarlett. It's a bit of a gear change. Looking at Gen Zers.
Yes. Gen Zers are 10 times likelier than boomers to be gay or bisexual. Now, whether this is 10 times likelier to be gay or bisexual or 10 times likelier to have come out, because I think one of the good things about Britain these days is it's much, much easier to be a gay or a lesbian, which is a very, very good thing. I mean, it's a much nicer place to live.
This is women particularly in this study, it would seem.
Well, it's ONS, right? So it's the Office for National Statistics, and so they've obviously done their stuff here. But I think what's interesting is that, you know, even with the shifting in attitudes and liberalisation of gay rights and gay people in general over the last decade or so, even if the message to me seems like, is there younger people who are saying this for some, because it's quite stark. 10 times is a lot. No, but so surely it's not all of a sudden more people are being born gay, because that doesn't make sense.
No, but it's more likely to be, isn't it, that particularly on the bisexual thing, that people are more willing to admit it.
Right, so that's the question. So is it something like, okay, I'm more likely to say it now, so you could be a boomer, so to speak, and say, oh, actually, I don't want to say I'm bisexual still in this day and age, but younger people feel more liberalised, or many of them just feel like they're more than one sexual, their sexuality is fluid. It seems to be the case from the things that transpire in the younger generation. Right?
But I mean, I do think it is much, much easier to come out now. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who said that her son, said, I've got something to tell you. And she thought, that it was really terrible. He stood in front of the television and he said, I'm gay. And his dad went, oh, thank goodness, I thought you had cancer. And actually, my nephew, we waited for him to come out. All of us were certain. So I just think it's very, very different. And I think it's great, actually. And I think it's really nice that we just live in a much more fluid society.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people should just be who they want to be at the end of the day. I mean, you know, I think a lot of people will look at this and go, well, actually, is there something in the water? You know, get a lot of those crazy people who go, you know, I won't say some of their names. Some people just think there's something in the water, or that our generation's lost its mind. But I think you're right. It is something to do with the shifting of attitudes. Young people see it's cool to be gay in a lot of places now. And I think that coming out story is really interesting, because I saw a video of a guy and his parents did exactly the same thing. He filmed it. His parents went, "Oh, is that it?" You know, it's like, no, there you go, shifting attitudes for you.
Yeah. Well, that's generally seen as a positive thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Should we have I know it's a heck of a gear change, but I just want to touch, because we are still waiting for the Chancellor. Just to remind you, the Chancellor is due to be talking to us any minute now. But as we await that, can we just have a look at what's going on in Washington and the Potomac, where this search is going on? It's likely to hit sort of 0 degrees. We know that obviously the Potomac is very cold. There's ice in there. It's very dark. The lighting's very bad. You know, they're trying to get people of the size to get things lit and all the rest of it. But searching for these possibly survivors, but more likely, I have to say, bodies in the river is going to be a hugely complex operation. And dangerous, actually.
Dangerous and actually awful and terrible. And, you know, having watched the mid-air collision, I think few people will have survived that, and then to survive the fall into the river, into the icy river. And we're now hours away, and they are finding bodies, and it just must be so awful. And as you say, dangerous, freezing, trying to find out what's going in the dark. I mean, you know, Washington D.C. What time is it? Sort of 9 o'clock. I mean, it's about 3 in the morning. And they're desperately trying to find people.
Most Americans won't even know this is going on because a lot of them will still be asleep, I would have thought.
So that happened about 9 p.m. So
well, you know, some of them will be waking up to this news. Of course, Donald Trump has already got onto Truth Social and tweeted out. He's you know, going, there's big questions to be asked. He said, why didn't the helicopter move up or down? I think was his statement specifically. Why didn't they move it up or down? I don't know. And something like that. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those things, and I have, to be honest, I've got every sympathy for him, and it's part of his appeal is that he thinks and talks like the common man.
Yes.
In that sense, because when you look at the pictures, the helicopter just goes straight into the plane.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you ask, well, why didn't they do something about it? Unfortunately, these things are, for reasons we don't yet understand, often more complex. I mean, it's things like the communications with the tower.
Yeah.
They were talking to the helicopter didn't respond.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there an
Was
issue
there
there?
something wrong? Yeah. We know that the runway changed last minute as well, didn't we? We've seen that communication from air traffic control, speaking to the plane, changing the runway that it was due to land on. So it's whether the helicopter got that sort of communication. We don't know. That will come out in the fullness of time.
Because, I mean, I think what's really important is exactly what they're going to do, is that they put up an inquiry soon. Because...
It's already opened, already started.
Absolutely, because the problem is that you need information, because without information, the vacuum is filled by speculation, which is really, really dangerous. We don't know what happened with that helicopter. Something could have gone wrong.
The thing about living in this day and age is that there's video footage of so many... So people are circulating the CCTV footage that was leaked out of the plane and the helicopter. So people have already began speculating, as you can imagine. But, of course, you know, what we've got to bear in mind is that 60 or so people have just died, have lost their lives, more than likely all of them, I suspect, at this point in time. Yeah. And I think, you know, time for those families to grieve and have their bit of a mourning period is so important, because this is going to feel so... I mean, you cannot imagine how those people are feeling this with families and friends. We saw those figure skaters that have announced that they were, was it American
US
figure,
national team,
figure skating team.
And a Russian couple of champions.
It's Washington, D.C., it's an international city. There'll be people from all over the world who I suspect are affected by this.
Yeah. I mean, and it's from Kansas, so Kansas is also going to be in mourning.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. It's a shock to the whole country as they try to come to terms with this. It is 9 o'clock, and that is the breaking news this morning, that horror plane crash in the States.
A terrifying moment. An American Airlines flight collides mid-air into a US Army helicopter above the US Capitol.
Well, now underway, a desperate search for survivors.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
Well, 300 emergency responders are searching the waters as officials admit they don't know if there are any survivors.
Also this morning, Hamas militants release a female Israeli soldier, Agam Berger, held in Gaza since October the 7th, 2023. Others should be released today.
Immigration raids on the rise. GB News finds out how many are exploiting an EU loophole to enter Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
Oh, OK. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, OK? So at the moment, OK, you're under arrest.
So I can confirm today that this government supports a third runway at Heathrow and is inviting proposals to be brought forward by the summer.
Is that going to boost the economy? Is it going to take too long before it makes a difference? We'll be talking to the Chancellor in just a moment.
The greatest Britain remembered. 60 years today since Winston Churchill was laid to rest.
After 3 days lying in state, Churchill's body was taken along the Thames and through the streets of London in military procession. It was the biggest...
Hello there. It's a cold start this morning, plenty of frost and also some icy stretches, but there is going to be plenty of sunshine. Stay tuned and I'll be here with all the details.
It's just got 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. The Chancellor has set out her vision for a new era of British growth. But will it hold up? Well, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, joins us now. Good morning to you, Rachel Reeves. Good to see you this morning. You've made it clear, haven't you, that economic growth is the #1 mission of your government. But the most recent official data shows there's virtually no growth in GDP. And in your announcement yesterday, not one of those announcements was new, and not one of them actually provides immediate growth. We'll see growth in 20, 30 years, but no answers for now. It's not solving the immediate problem. So what are you going to do to get growth in the economy now?
Well, the most recent numbers did show the economy growing, but that growth is not strong enough. I want to go further and faster in delivering it. A business survey came out straight after my speech yesterday, suggested that 2/3 of business, because of what I announced, now feel more confident about our country's growth prospects. And I'm confident as well, because low growth, which is what we've experienced for the last decade or so, doesn't need to be our destiny. We've got so much potential, and the announcements yesterday, whether it is a third runway at Heathrow, the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor, creating Europe's Silicon Valley here in the UK, a new stadium at Old Trafford, investment in Teesside in sustainable aviation fuel, reopening the airport in Doncaster, all of these things add up to an ambitious plan to grow our economy, to make working people better off with more money in their pockets.
Well, and that sounds great, except that 1 in 4 businesses have cut jobs since your budget. Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Tesco, Asda, BP have announced thousands of job losses and blaming your policies for it.
Well, businesses have to make their own decisions about the number of staff they need to serve their customers. If you look at the forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility, the independent forecaster, they forecast that during the course of this Parliament, employment will rise and unemployment will fall. The announcement yesterday about the third runway at Heathrow could create 100,000 jobs. The investment zone that I announced yesterday in Wrexham and Flintshire with JCB and Airbus could create 6,000 jobs. The investment by Prologis at East Midlands Airport, 2,000 jobs. So there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic about the ability of our economy to grow and create jobs, because this government are serious about getting things built once again in Britain, not just talking about it, but delivering. And for Heathrow, we want spades in the ground in this Parliament. We've asked Heathrow to come forward with plans by the summer. We want to sign off a development consent order in this Parliament so we can get cracking and see those planes take off.
But talk in the papers today is saying that Heathrow won't be ready until 2050. So what happens in the immediate term, in the next few months? Because if the economy continues to underperform and you don't meet your fiscal rules, can you rule out emergency tax measures after March the 26th, which is when the OBR sets out its economic forecast? Can you rule that out?
Well, we made tax changes in the budget. The Office of Budget Responsibility will give their forecast on March the 26th. That's in 2 months' time, and I will set out our plans then. But in the budget in October, we did what was necessary to draw a line under the economic and fiscal mismanagement of the previous government, a £22 billion black hole that I inherited, that we have now addressed. But I'll set out the plans. I'm very happy to come back on your programme to set those out on March the 26th.
Look forward to that. Can I just, before we let you go, can I just ask you about the 7-year tax rule? Because there's a lot of speculation that you're going to scrap that. which would allow people to pass things on to their family, and as long as they survive for 7 years, there wouldn't be any inheritance tax payable on that. Is that going to go?
I've got no plans to make changes to that. I set out the tax changes at the budget in October last year, but in that budget I was able to freeze fuel duty and haven't increased taxes on working people, their income tax, their national insurance or their VAT, because this government is determined to tackle the cost of living crisis created by the previous government that we are now dealing with.
OK. Chancellor, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Well, we're joined now by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Good morning to you, Catherine. What did you make of what the Chancellor had to say there?
Yes, well, I think these plans that she announced yesterday, they are big and they are bold. You know, if all of this development happens, all these new airport runways, this Oxford-Cambridge growth corridor, these are really big and ambitious plans, and there's a lot to be welcomed, of course, not so much if you are concerned about the environment, perhaps, but the problem is, isn't it, that all of these things are going to take many, many, many years, first of all, to get them up and running, and then to deliver that growth that is the government's #1 mission. Now, we need growth now, and none of this, as far as I can see, is going to deliver that. In fact, many people would say that Rachel Reeves' budget back in October is delivering the very, very opposite, because what it did with that huge national insurance rise for employers is make it harder for businesses, and so we are seeing these job cuts, bank branch closures, many businesses saying that they are being hurt, that their ability to hire and invest is being directly hampered by those actions that Rachel Reeves took. And although they don't want to increase taxes further, you know, before the election that they said they had no plans to increase taxes beyond a very few limited measures they'd laid out, but things change. So I think it's very likely that there may need to be some adjustments in the spring. So in the short term, we don't really have any growth, 0.1%, nothing to speak of. The economy has been broadly flat, and the trouble is that people want to feel better off and soon, and the government need to make people feel better off and soon, because although they've got a massive majority, a lot of those seats are pretty marginal, and we've seen in the opinion polls Labour have plummeted. So we all need growth, and we need to see it quickly, and nothing, as far as I can see, to suggest that anything announced yesterday is going to bring any of that anytime soon.
OK. Catherine, thanks very much indeed. It's a shame we didn't have longer with the Chancellor, but that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. What's interesting is that this is, especially the airport expansions, a big headline-grabbing policy. And yet, what's Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband make of it all?
Well, he wasn't there yesterday, was he?
No.
He didn't make it out of Westminster.
Sadiq Khan has said he's going to fight this all the way. So it's caused some pretty deep splits in the Labour ranks. So that's going to be a very big hurdle for them to get over, actually. But there'll be more analysis on that, of course, throughout the course of the day.
Now, I've just got time to tell you about the Great British Giveaway. Just one day left in this one for an incredible £50,000 in your bank account, totally tax-free. You can spend it how you like. Here are all of the details that you need.
Lines closed tomorrow on your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
It's such a nice feeling. Just go for it. It's one text, and if I can win, anyone can win. I was on cloud nine. I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE 922.
Washington's national airport, Reagan National, which is very, very close to the city centre. Before that, it had spent a normal Wednesday making a large number of flights and was simply making a routine approach to the airport. There is talk that the runway was switched quite late on and the pilots lined up, obviously, for that. But And of course, there's huge amounts of speculation, which at this time is extremely distressing. Comments from President Trump, where he appears to blame the air traffic controllers. That's, I would suggest, unhelpful. I have been looking at what one very well qualified individual has been saying. This is Dr. Philip Greenspun. He's both a helicopter instructor and a former pilot on one of these aircraft. And he says the most likely suggestion at this stage, and bear in mind that this is pure speculation, the investigators are getting to work, is that the Black Hawk crew and the air traffic controllers were talking about two different aircraft. So the pilots of the helicopter were told, watch out for this incoming CRJ aircraft, and they thought they could see it, but they were actually looking at another one. Now, I absolutely stress this is speculation, but it is from someone who is, I would suggest, slightly more informed than the president.
And let's talk about Reagan Airport, shall we? Because it's in very close proximity to the White House, so it's a very busy airspace, not only with commercial flights, but you can imagine with US Army personnel as well.
Yes, so it is just 3 miles south of the White House. It's Class B airspace, which has the tightest regulations of any airspace. Of course, because it's so close to the heart of government, there are extremely stringent rules, and it is very, very closely supervised airspace. There is a lot of helicopter activity. Marine One, the president's own helicopter, flies in and out, and this particular Black Hawk helicopter was from Fort Belvoir, a base just 15 miles or so south. So with any of these issues, there would always be very close communication between the pilots and air traffic controllers, and actually you can think about other situations, for instance, in places like New York, where you have sightseeing helicopters. Clearly, there has to be very, very close control over this. And so something has gone desperately wrong. With many crashes, we find subsequently that there's a whole series of events which combined to cause this tragedy. For now, all we can do is just express sympathy for the loved ones of the victims of what appears to be a terrible, terrible crash.
OK, Simon, thank you. We are expecting an update, actually, from the authorities on this. 12:30 UK time, so we'll have live coverage of that here on GB News.
Now, it's been 60 years since Winston Churchill was laid to rest. We'll be remembering his legacy next.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
you're
the failure is...
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As we kick off 2025, many of us might be thinking about a bit of a wardrobe refresh, especially if you're over 50 and you feel like the high street doesn't quite cater to you.
Indeed. That's where our next guest, Mel Tillett, comes in. She's in the studio with us now.
Mel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. That you are this accidental influencer. I love that you said that's the first time.
Yeah, it is. That's the first time I've heard it.
You can have that
yes,
free on
thank
TV.
you so much. It's quite true.
Tell us about your following. Obviously, an influencer that many people might typically think of would be someone in their teens, someone in their 20s, someone who's particularly social media savvy, using TikTok. Talk to us about your brand of influencer.
Well, our influencer, my kind of influence is over the older age group, the over 50s. For my business, I do a lot of live videos. I do them early in the morning at 7:30, which sounds ridiculous, but I know my ladies are up and about at that time having a cup of coffee or whatever that might be. And just being honest about day-to-day life. So my dogs are running about, my grandchildren are even sometimes in them, one thing and another. So it's just been purely by accident that I've got this really nice, loyal following, and I get lovely messages off ladies. I'll do things like, I'll tell them when I'm going for a mammogram, and I'll say, come on, everybody go for your mammogram.
That's brilliant.
All sort of health-conscious things. I've been a lot heavier than I am now, and I've slimmed down and lost some weight. I've been talking about that journey as well. And then ladies will ask me questions on the videos, and we chat about all sorts of different things. And now I'm getting messages every day, and people are loving the clothing ranges that we do. And it's just, I started off as a business, that's purely what I did, but it's turned out into this other, I get recognised places I go now, which is really weird.
It must be a huge benefit to your business as well.
We employ around about 50 people.
Wow.
And I'm quite open to my audience and saying, you know, while ever you keep buying offers, while ever you're loving our products and our clothing, you're keeping 50 people in jobs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Returning to that breaking news now in Washington, D.C., where an American Airlines flight collided in midair with a U.S. Army helicopter. This is above Reagan National Washington Airport at 9 p.m. local time. Both the plane and the helicopter crashing into Potomac River. A rescue operation has been underway since in the most horrific conditions. There's ice floating in the water there. It's a windy night. It is the early hours of the morning there in Washington, D.C. So far, 19 bodies have been recovered from that river. No survivors as of yet.
As you can see, I mean, the Potomac's a big river. And so, they're lighting it best they can from the sides, but the lighting is proving to be very difficult too. And one of the authorities there saying you basically have to search inch by inch in these sort of conditions, which is why it's taking a long time. But there's going to be a statement, an update for us in about 3 hours. So we'll bring it to you live here on GB News.
Now at 9:20, it is 60 years to the day since Sir Winston Churchill was laid to rest.
The wartime Prime Minister was given the largest state funeral in history at the time. Sir Winston led Britain to victory over Nazi Germany, earning the love of his nation, and still holds it too. Will Hollis has the story.
Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight.
Winston Churchill's long life took him across continents as a soldier and into the highest office as Prime Minister. The trial of leading the nation during the Second World War cemented his place in history. Despite a life of heavy drinking and smoking, he lived to age 90, dying January 24th, 1965. But the planning for his death started a decade earlier when Sir Winston suffered his first stroke. Codenamed Operation Hope Not, the Queen ordered a funeral in scale befitting his position in history. 60 years have passed since.
It was clear that the death of Sir Winston Churchill was going to be a major national and international event.
At Churchill College at the University of Cambridge, archivists keep the personal papers of his life and death. Alan Packwood is director of the Churchill Archives Centre.
So here we have one document from those files. It's marked confidential and it documents the procedure to be followed on the death of Sir Winston Churchill. The initial action is that on his death, his private secretary, Anthony Montagu Brown, is to immediately inform the Prime Minister's private secretary. The Prime Minister's private secretary then has to tell the Queen's private secretary, the Cabinet Office and the Chief Whip's private secretary, and then a pre-arranged statement is to be supplied to the Prime Minister for him to issue.
After 3 days lying in state, Churchill's body was taken along the Thames and through the streets of London in military procession. It was the biggest state funeral in history at the time, watched around the world by millions. John Maitland Hudson was just 20 years old. 6 feet tall, the able seaman was one of the lucky few to get a role holding the rear gun carriage carrying Churchill's coffin.
It was a great, great honour. The streets were absolutely thronging with onlookers. They climbed lampposts, they hung out of windows. It was evident that we had a terrific responsibility and there was a great deal of pressure.
In life, Winston Churchill earned the respect and love of his nation. In death, he's remembered with equally high esteem.
He's probably one of the greatest prime ministers this country's had.
I think he did really well, obviously. Not an easy job.
Pity we haven't got him now.
Back at the Archives Centre, Alan says Churchill will stand out across history.
He's become this iconic figure.
In life, Sir Winston led Britain to victory in the darkest days of the Second World War. His light in death still shining.
"This is your victory," he said to them, and those words will long be remembered by those who heard them spoken.
Will Hollis, GB News.
A remarkable man, and quite right, we're remembering him today and many days, because he's someone who's just led this country. We could do with a powerful leader like that.
Yeah, we really could. Just a reminder of our top news this morning, the American Airlines flight that collided in midair with that US Army helicopter in Washington, D.C., both of them crashing into the Potomac River. Obviously, a rescue operation is underway there. There is going to be a press conference from the authorities at 12:30. We'll bring that to you on GB News. That's it from us today. Up next, Andrew and Bev with Britain's Newsroom.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost. Also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead. Plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coasts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland. Could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland. And quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A501 is partly blocked by an accident on Mullaglass Road in Lisbon, causing queues. In West Yorkshire, the A61 is partly blocked by an accident on Barnes Road at Woolley, with queues each way towards there. On the M6 in Greater Manchester, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed south